Welcome to the Bakersfield City Council meeting. This television broadcast is brought to you by the local cable companies, the County of Kern, and the City of Bakersfield. You can watch the rebroadcast of this meeting Saturday at 7 p.m., Sunday at 10 a.m., and the following Wednesday at 7 p.m. You can download the agenda for this meeting at www.bakersfieldcity.us. Presiding over this evening's meeting, the Honorable Mayor Karen K. Go.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to call to order the 5:15 City Council meeting of October 21st, 2020. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Go.
Here.
Vice Mayor Parlier.
Here.
Councilmember Rivera.
Here.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Here.
Councilmember Weir.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
I am here.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Freeman.
Here.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Here. Thank you. On March 4th, Governor Newsom declared a state of emergency in California due to the threat of COVID. The governor also passed several executive orders, including the suspension of some components of the Brown Act related to public meetings such as this. And as such, Councilmember Smith is participating by phone, and all council votes tonight will be conducted by roll call. At this time, we have the honor of having Rabbi Jonathan Klein, who's the leader of the Temple Bethel. He'll lead us in the invocation. He was appointed in May of 2020 and relocated from Los Angeles, where he was very active in the community and in faith-based organizations. And I got to watch one of your services recently during the holidays. And then following the invocation, Christopher Boyle, who is our Development Services Director, will lead us in the pledge. And thank you all for standing.
Thank you so much.
Rabbi.
I'm honored to be able to join you today and engage in our civic duty to build a more just and sacred Bakersfield for all. As a new rabbi in the community, I'm grateful for the kindness and generosity that you've extended to me, to the mayor in particular. I've had a good time meeting along the way in this strange era that we find ourselves. The Jewish community goes back many years here. We've been here for a very long time, and my understanding is we've been committed to partnership with the city of Bakersfield and see ourselves as committed to being good citizens in the community. So let's take a moment for prayer. O God, known by many names, God of my ancestors, God of this city council, Mayor Go and their predecessors, God of compassion and mercy, God of justice, Ribono Shel Olam, Master of the world, we once again gather today, as we likely have since 1874 when we became a city, busying ourselves with bettering our community, making it more prosperous, more just, more beautiful, more affordable, and also more fair and more equitable. As civil servants of the community, we gather to develop Bakersfield into an emblem of that perfect union that can be a cause for celebration, a priceless emblem in the middle of this great state of California that can embody the prophet Amos's vision, letting justice roll down like waters, righteousness like a mighty stream. With the power that we hold, we can innovate, imagine, use our intellect to devise an oasis that drives ingenuity. We also have at our fingers the ability to let fear overwhelm us, embody a scarcity model that emphasizes what we lack. We can accept inequities and instead pursue personal quests. This option is available to us as well. God, strengthen us to focus our energies on those struggling, those shut in their homes, the poor, the elderly, the indigent, those who lack homes altogether, those in mourning for lost loved ones during this pandemic, those whose hearts ache from loss of their jobs, the loss or near loss of their businesses. Let our compassion be as yours is, a radical compassion that takes the suffering of all into account. Let us be, as Jewish sources teach of your ways, ones that lift up the fallen, heal the sick, free the captive, and keep faith with those who sleep in the dust. God of radical amazement, let every day be a wondrous day for us in which we wake up, grateful to be alive, ready to help others, and to perfect your fragile planet, that our children and our children's children will thank us for our actions in these council chambers, and your glory felt by all. V'taher libenu le'ovtecha be'emet, purify our hearts to serve you in truth. We say this in your name, and let us say, Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Mr. Boyle.
Ready? Salute. Pledge.
Thank you. You may be seated. Welcome, everyone, and we're glad to have you here engaging in the civic process. Here are a few guidelines to help our meeting run smoothly. We request that you turn off your phones. Please be courteous in the use of cameras and videos, and for safety reasons and as a courtesy to others, no signs are allowed in the council chamber or in the lobby. Applause is allowed only during the presentations portion of the meeting, but not during other portions of the meeting. And please avoid any behavior that disrupts the meeting. Madam Clerk, please read the first item.
Under presentations, certificate of recognition presented to Holly Lazzarini of the Lazzarini Family Foundation for its generosity and contributions to the city beautification projects.
Ms. Holly Lazzarini and Bill and Victoria, please join me, and I'll ask also our Keep Bakersfield Beautiful team to join me. So here we have Holly Lazzarini, President of the Lazzarini Family Foundation, Bill Lazzarini, Treasurer and Secretary, and Victoria. Cheerleader, okay, that's a very, very important role. This family has a passion for our community and a passion to help others, and they have been instrumental in donating very large sums of money to clean up the Kern River Parkway. You can see some slides up there, and there we have people, but not just anyone. These are persons from the Bakersfield Homeless Center who now have jobs cleaning because of the generosity of this family. And you'll see them cleaning up the Kern River Parkway, also the West Side Parkway, and we're just so delighted for their generosity in donating $30,000 this year to clean both of those areas. But more than $30,000, it's providing people jobs. Those who are the most vulnerable are now having a wonderful opportunity. This is not the first time that the Lazzarini family is doing this. It's the third time, and they've been equally as generous in the past. We'll hear more from our Keep Bakersfield Beautiful friends, but 953 bags of litter were collected in 2020. And now I think before we move on, let me present this certificate, and then I'm going to invite Heather Piniella to come up and say a few more words. We'll have you all speak in a while. Certificate of recognition presented to the Lazzarini Family Foundation in honor of your $30,000 sponsorship of the Kern River Parkway and West Side Parkway cleanups through the Adopt an Area and Freeway Litter programs, in recognition of your outstanding collaborative efforts with the Bakersfield Homeless Center to provide job opportunities for persons experiencing homelessness, and in recognition of your generosity to support the enhancement of our community. So it's my honor, Madam President, to be able to present this to you. Thank you so much for your generosity. Bill and Victoria, thank you also for your generosity. And now I'm going to ask Heather Piniella, who's my mayor's appointee to Keep Bakersfield Beautiful and past chair, to come up with a few words, and then following her will be Nate Meeks, who is now the chair of Keep Bakersfield Beautiful. Heather?
Thank you, Mayor Go. I just want to say the Lazzarini name is so well known in this community. I don't think it's a mystery to us, but on behalf of Keep Bakersfield Beautiful, I just want to say thank you for helping us continue our mission through your philanthropy. I know, Holly, that the path is a very important place to you, and just to put it in perspective, the Lazzarini family is helping us to keep from Allen all the way to Manor clean on the bike trail for a crew of 4 once a week. So that is such an important service to our community, especially during the time of COVID when we're trying to be outdoors and healthier. But thank you all for everything that you do, and we appreciate you. Thanks.
Thank you, Heather. Nate Meeks, chairperson.
And on behalf of Keep Bakersfield Beautiful, I want to say the strength of our organization is really the thousands of residents that volunteer to come out and do our cleanups. And it's particularly grateful and timely that you've been able to give these donations to us this year so we can contract, because with COVID-19, we can't get our volunteers out. So we're just really proud and really happy that we can carry on the tradition of cleanup in the city of Bakersfield and to keep Bakersfield beautiful.
Thank you, Nathan. And do we have another little thank you?
Thank you, Lazzarini family, for being our sponsor, and we're part of the crew 3.
Thank you so much. And Holly, Madam President, would you like to offer a few words?
Oh, gosh. No.
You can sing. Go ahead.
No, I can't. But anyway, we just really are excited to be able to do this, and it just makes me so happy that some of these people have gone on to get jobs. We're just thrilled to be able to do it for these people.
Thank you so much, Holly. Bill?
Well, I just would like to thank the City Council for the recognition. Thank you, Mayor Go. Holly's had a passion for the river for 20-plus years, and she's pretty much walking the dogs down in that riverbed every day that she's in Bakersfield. And it's easy to support things that you really believe in and that you have a passion for. And the people that are going to make a difference in this community to really make it a model city and get this litter and get these homeless people a chance at life are those of us that have the means to do it. And we're just blessed to be able to do it, and we're very grateful for this recognition. So thank you to all that have been involved in that.
Thank you so much for your generosity. Thank you. Very much. Thank you again, the Lazzarini family. We really appreciate your caring for our community and caring for homeless persons. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Public statements. We've received 11 public speaker cards, 9 cards regarding backyard hens, and 3 regarding separate subjects. The first speaker is Cynthia Zimmer.
Okay, let me just make some comments before we start that. Due to the governor's executive order, which waived the Brown Act provisions requiring the physical presence of the public in light of the pandemic, public comments have been encouraged to be made by email and phone call to the city clerk. Those received in such manner have already been provided to the council. If you're here in person to make a public statement, please give a public speaker card to the clerk. All statements are given a 3-minute time limit, 15 minutes per topic. And if you have written comments that are longer than your verbal statement, please give those to the clerk and she'll provide copies to the council. If you're here to speak on a workshop matter, we ask that you speak after staff's presentation on that matter. And if you're here to speak on hearing items listed in the agenda, now isn't the time to speak. You'll be given an opportunity when the hearing matters come up. We're very interested and concerned with your issues. However, due to the public notice requirement of the Brown Act, the council can't take action when an item isn't on the agenda. The council can, however, refer your matter to committee or request that staff contact you. Again, please avoid any behavior that disrupts the meeting, such as repetitive statements or going over the 3-minute time limit. And so now, Madam Clerk, would you please call our first public speaker? And I think it was District Attorney Cynthia Zimmer. Thank you so much, Ms. Zimmer, for joining us. We appreciate your dedication to our community and keeping us safe and fighting for justice.
Thank you, Mayor Go, members of the council. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm here to speak to you about Proposition 20 that's on the ballot and ask for your support. In 2014, Proposition 47 passed, and 2 years later, Proposition 57 was passed in the state of California. Those propositions have caused great difficulty for public safety and keeping our streets safe. They've caused problems for law enforcement and those who assist, like us, at the district attorney's office and trying to protect victims of crime. One of the things that Proposition 20 addresses is our serial thieves. That's one of the first prongs of the proposition. Because of Proposition 47, there were theft cases were reduced to misdemeanors if they were under $950. Practically speaking, that's been a nightmare for retailers and actually homeowners. When people steal something under $950, they receive a ticket, a promise to appear in court. They're not taken to jail. About 80% of those do not appear in court. So when they don't appear in court, they get a failure to appear warrant. When law enforcement finds that person in the streets for a failure to appear warrant, they get another ticket. And we have seen this going over and over and over again, and the majority of these people are committing quality of life crimes, the number one crime, theft-related crimes of an amount under $950. And it's been very difficult to do anything to get people into court to try to address the issues that cause them to steal to begin with, which are two major issues: drug addiction and mental health issues. So one of the things that Proposition 20 does is address that and allows, if a person has 2 prior petty theft convictions and they steal an item more than $250, they may be arrested and booked on a felony and go to court and face felony charges. If they're convicted, they will not go to state prison because of AB 109. It's not one of the qualifying offenses, but they can receive felonious treatment and sentence and receive time in the county jail and also receive mandatory mental health and drug treatment programs, as well as any other conditions of probation. That is huge. That is huge for downtown Bakersfield. That is huge for our retailers and our residents. The other thing that Prop 20 does is that, well, Prop 57, when a person is convicted in court and they get a sentence by a judge and they're sent to state prison, previous to Prop 57, they did their time. Now, because of Prop 57, if it's a crime, a certain type of crime, they are eligible for early release. And those are considered nonviolent felonies. However, that's sort of a legal term of art. There are several violent felonies that are allowed to be for early release, like rape of an unconscious person. That is one of the offenses for which our parole board will allow for early release, in that they don't do the time that the judge sentenced them to. Domestic violence, felony domestic violence. If someone is sentenced to that to state prison, they don't have to do all their time. They can qualify for early release. So what Proposition 20 does, it adds a few more crimes which prohibit early release, and those are really heinous crimes that have been ignored. And the third thing, I have 20 seconds, that it does, Prop 47 reduced many felonies to misdemeanors. That prohibits us or law enforcement from taking a DNA sample from that person when they're booked into the jail. And the main way we're able to catch cold case killers is through the use of DNA. And when DNA sample is taken, it goes into the Department of Justice database. And so this would allow us to take DNA samples from people who are arrested on misdemeanors which used to be felonies. So I urge you to support us in law enforcement for Prop 20. Thank you.
Thank you, DA Zimmer. We appreciate that. Thank you. And next public speaker, please.
Jenny Brown.
Good afternoon. Please introduce yourself and go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jenny Brown. I work for the Kern High School District. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. There's a consent item on a resolution for annexation for property that the high school district owns. And I see that we have staff recommendation on that resolution, but I did want to share the project with you just briefly. Let you know that it's a comprehensive high school. It's our 19th for the Kern High School District. We're very excited about it. And I'm just sharing with you some pictures, photos of the projected project. We have already started construction on the project, and it is scheduled to be open in school year 22. Hopefully by then we'll be out of masks and in full school at that time, but we are very excited about it and appreciate the city's consideration of this resolution and the work that, good work we've been able to do with Public Works to help us with our connection for infrastructure and utilities. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Madam Clerk, next speaker, please.
Terry Maxwell.
Do they have to put the screen down, or will it appear on this?
Just wait till he starts talking. Good afternoon. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. My name is Terry Maxwell. I'm a resident very close to the 24th Street. I have some concerns, some safety concerns. The first one that I want to discuss with you is where when you're headed westbound on 24th Street and it goes from 4 lanes to 3 lanes, you've created a very dangerous condition. As you can see in this illustration, you're asking people to merge here to the left as this lane comes straight into that same lane. I've almost been hit 3 or 4 times now, and that is something that I think that the city council had better look into. You're now aware of a dangerous condition, and I would like that to be taken care of. Either you need to make it the last lane, the outside lane that condenses down, or have that lane merge a lot earlier than coming straight into that curve, because it's dangerous when you're trying to merge to the left and somebody else is coming straight in front of you. The second condition appears at 24th Street and Pine Street, where you've put your crosswalk. It's probably not that easy to see, but this is at the limit line, and if you look to your left, it's very difficult to see almost anything coming at you. As you move forward from the limit line, you can see that the box, the switch box for the lights for your crosswalk are completely obstruct your view. Why they would put it there instead of on the west side corner where nobody's even going to be looking. This is looking left to see traffic coming at you. You actually have to pull to the point where most of at least half of your car is out almost into the traffic before you can actually see anything coming at you. Another extremely dangerous condition that has been created because of a poor design. I'm not sure, again, why they put that particular box where they did. The last thing I'm concerned about is your S-curve. Your angle of incidence, I did some calculations. This is based on cosine triangulation. Before, when you had your S-curve go from B Street to D Street, you had a 57% or 57 degree angle of incidence. It was supposed to be that it was going to start at A and then go to D, but you have not done that. It actually starts at the alley or halfway between A and B. So when you look at the angle of incidence, it's now only 67.29. That's only a decrease of 18%. If you understand kinetic energy and what that does in terms of the centripetal force or the G-force, you can see that at 30 miles an hour coming into that turn, you used to have, for a 3,000 weighted car, which is about average, 673,585 joules. If you make it 45 miles an hour like they are proposing, you will then increase the number of joules by almost a million.
Mr. Maxwell, your time's up. Your time is already up, Mr. Maxwell. Thank you very much for sharing. And Madam Clerk, next speaker, please.
We have Seema Richardson.
Hey, Mayor. Sorry.
Yes.
having
Oh, I'm
technical
sorry.
difficulty.
Mr. Councilmember Rivera and then Councilmember Gonzalez.
Okay. Well, I was just going to ask staff that they look into that box element. That does seem to be an obstruction. I'm kind of curious if there's a way to mitigate that somehow. And then I think Councilmember Gonzalez has something else.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just going to ask staff to please reach out to Mr. Maxwell and discuss his concerns in detail in person, please.
Thank you. Welcome. Please introduce yourself. And would you lower your mic, please? Just, there you go.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The purpose of my appearance today is simple. I think I have 3 points that I'd like to talk about. One of them is the concern that the folks who were against backyard hens, and it was that it'll bring the property values down. I've been talking to several realtors about it, and the question I've asked them is that if you got a listing with a hen coop in the backyard, would you take it or would you refuse the listing because of the value that the property would have? 100% of the realtors I spoke to, they said if we had a listing request, we would list the property. And we do not believe that it brings the property value down. So I thought that there was an interesting dichotomy between, it was almost hypocrisy, but I won't call it that. That on the one end, they're saying that the property values go down. On the other end, they're saying we're going to list the properties regardless of the coop being there. So I wanted to bring that and shed light on that, there is in fact no concern that the property values would go down. The purpose of my concern is that I believe that it increases the property values rather than devalues. I, for one, would buy a property just because there is a chicken coop back in the yard. One of the other concerns that they raised was that the wild chickens, people's chickens that kind of jump out of the fence, what are we going to do with that? And I have a nonprofit called Friends of Animals, Children, and Environment. I'm moving it from Delaware to California. And I would like to sit and talk to the city on how my nonprofit could take over that issue and resolve it so it's no longer on the table. I thank you for your time, and I appreciate you allowing me to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Richardson. Madam Clerk, we are now in the backyard hens portion. There are a number of people who want to speak. We have 15 minutes for this portion and a number of people. So if you just please avoid repetitive comments, and we'll only be able to go for 15 minutes, and we've already used how much of that, Madam Clerk? Okay. Have the clock reset. Please call the next speaker.
Gary Simmons.
Looks like there were 9 people who want to speak, so you can pace yourself accordingly.
I'm here to read a letter from an outside investor that's moving into Bakersfield and building the skilled nursing facility at Stockdale Highway and Coffee Road. Unfortunately, he could not be here, but he wanted me to read the letter. And the letter was addressed to Councilman Gonzalez, but maybe he's received it a little bit too late to respond. But I'll read the letter, and this is a person that's investing millions and millions of dollars into that facility and into that hospital. We're not looking for Measure N money. We're not looking for taxpayer money. This particular individual and his company is going to invest millions of dollars and put a hospital in place to save lives. This is his letter. It is very short. We're playing beat the clock. It says, Dear Mr. Gonzalez, we are concerned to hear about the potential ordinance change in Bakersfield to allow R1 zone neighborhoods to have backyard chickens. While I am in no means an expert in disease, I can't imagine this being a very good idea. Being on the forefront of our current pandemic, we are in long-term care industry. We have been working diligently on all things related to infections and infection control. The population we care for and will care for in Bakersfield have many comorbidities that do not do well with infections, whether they are minor infections like a cold or major infections like coronavirus or salmonella, for that matter. Adding the potential for a salmonella outbreak seems crazy. Germs from poultry can cause a variety of illness in all people, ranging from minor skin infection to serious illness that could cause death. Key word, death. Okay, keep it in mind. I was on the CDC website for COVID-related information and saw that the CDC was also investigating 15 multi-state outbreaks of salmonella infections linked to contact with chickens in backyard flocks. As soon to be a current business operator in Bakersfield, I hope this ordinance does not pass. Thank you for taking my time.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons.
I'm not quite done. I've got a few seconds left. Is a lot of emotion are going into this over the weeks. The information coming from attorney firms is becoming monumental. Today I received my 4th phone call. Why they're calling me, I don't know. But I received my 4th phone call from an attorney's firm asking for information regarding this. We have to avoid that. We have to extend our time, and we have to look into our EIR. We have to look into the possibility of nuisance neighbors being sued. We have to extend this. This is way too difficult of a subject. Thank you for allowing me 2 seconds over.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. Madam Clerk, next speaker, please. And how much time do we have left?
9.5 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
We have Joseph Candle.
Welcome. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Joe. Thank you, council members. My name is Joe Kendall. I'm a petroleum drilling and production engineer with 55 years of experience in California. I've been directly involved on a day-to-day basis with environmental issues for 51 years in the petroleum industry here in California. As it now stands, if I want to go just use 1 acre or less of land to maybe drill a very shallow 750 to 1,500 foot hole, which may only take 3 to 5 days from start to finish, I have to do a CEQA environmental impact study, which potentially at times has cost up to $100,000. This is just for a 3 to 5 day well, which may be a dry hole. On Saturday, I'm looking through the agenda for this meeting, which comprises 1,739 pages. I find where the city self-exempted itself from a CEQA EIR with a notice of exemption, when 85,000 parcels and 200,000 residents may be affected. The exemption reads as follows. Reasons why this project is exempt. There is no possibility that this project would have a similar effect would have a significant effect on the environment because it consists of data collection, research, experimental management, and resource evaluation activities, which do not result in a serious or a major disturbance to an environmental resource. On 85,000 parcels? It also says the parcel is exempt from CEQA Section 15061 based on common sense. You're kidding me. In my 55 years of experience, this exemption is an absolute travesty. And a government finger in the face of all the citizens in the city of Bakersfield. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Kendall. Next speaker, please.
We have M.T. Miracle.
Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is M.T. Miracle. As this process is about to come to an end, I want to express my sincerest thank you to Mayor Go for facilitating the many council meetings that have taken place over the past few months. I would also like to thank our elected city council members for their service to our city, for their thoughtfulness towards the many topics that they are responsible to understand, discuss, and make decisions on. I've been a citizen participant in the democratic process for these last 6 months here at these council meetings. It has always been clear to me that you love our city. You take your role seriously. You have sacrificed a lot in service of this community. You do what you believe is right. Individually and as a group, you desire to make Bakersfield a better city. For the majority of council members that are in favor of amending the current city ordinance, I have been impressed with your willingness to understand and learn about the topics that make backyard hens the right choice for Bakersfield. Quality of life benefits and families are at the core of this topic. For the council members that are opposed and have a different view than I do, I would like to share that this is just one topic. I have a feeling we agree on many more topics than we would disagree on. If the opportunity arises in the future, I look forward to working collaboratively and respectfully with you. If you would like to continue the discussion of backyard hens, I am willing and available to do so. Mayor Go, I would like to share that communicating and working with the city attorney's department has been a positive experience for me. They have not always told me what I wanted to hear, but they have been professional, reachable, and knowledgeable. I would like to acknowledge that Bakersfield residents are amazing. Hens or no hens, this process has been so rewarding and has been a real gift to me. I've met so many new friends. I will end with the 2 words that I started with, and they do not begin to express how grateful I am to each of you for allowing me opportunities to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miracle.
We have 5 minutes.
Next
Next
speaker,
we
please.
have Bruce Bagwell.
We have 5 minutes left on this topic.
Hello, everybody. I just want to say a quick thank you very much for hearing us on the chicken side of things, and I'm looking forward to having legal chickens in the backyard. I've grown up with chickens most of my life, never had anybody sick or had any problems with them. Get some delicious eggs. I appreciate all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bagwell. Madam Clerk, next speaker, please.
We have Callie Beckwith.
Good
Welcome.
evening. Thanks for the time. I'm going to go quick. So I just wanted to share on our 1/4 acre residential lot. I bragged about my bananas last time, but we have a garden and edible landscape, and our hens are an important part of our ecosystem. So quarter acre. We currently have ready to harvest or just about ready pomegranate, figs, plums, passion fruit, pumpkins, lemongrass, bananas, sweet potatoes, lettuce, guavas, loofah sponges, basil and herbs, apples, persimmons, jujubes, amaranth, tomatoes, eggplant, raspberries, asparagus, this year's Christmas tree, which we'll be chopping down, and of course fresh eggs. So this is just about a third of what we grow in a year, again on a quarter acre in our residential home. Thanks to our hens, we've spent $0 on fertilizer. I don't add anything to the garden except for homemade compost scraps, which the hens provide an important source of nitrogen for the hot compost pile. As you can imagine, our young boys have some incredible science lessons, lots of chores, and very nutritious food. So this is really about food sovereignty, and I bought the home years ago, and I paid $23,000 in a lot premium to have the bigger backyard. I didn't know if we'd have a yappy dog next door or a feral cat or neighbors who like to party all weekend, but that's a chance as a homeowner that you take. And again, I love what Councilmember Smith said about we govern and we make policies for responsible citizens and not the what ifs. So thank you so much for supporting this and for hearing all of us for this initiative. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ms. Beckwood. Next speaker, please. And this will be our last speaker.
Kirk Bolin.
We have 2.5 minutes left on this topic, so go ahead. Welcome.
Kirk Bolin, Ward 4. Good evening, Mayor Go and council members. I'm here today to once again show my support for backyard hens. I would like to thank the council members for passing the first reading of the ordinance that will allow us the freedom to raise backyard hens as pets and a source of healthy eggs for our families. One of the arguments allowing backyard hens is it would cause a reduction in property values. This simply isn't so. Many cities already allow backyard hens. And in fact, some real estate agents see having a backyard coop as a major selling point. According to Realtor.com, the top 10 housing markets of 2020 are Boise, Idaho, McAllen, Texas, Tucson, Arizona, Chattanooga, Tennessee, Columbia, South Carolina, Rochester, New York, Colorado Springs, Colorado, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Memphis, Tennessee, Charleston, North Carolina, and all of the 10 cities on the list allow backyard hens. Also, according to BusinessInsider.com, the top 10 places to live in 2020, I'm not going to waste time by going through the names this time, but again, all 10 of the cities on that list allow backyard hens. Once again, I would like to thank the council members that listen to the community with an open mind and giving our families a family fun activity that will benefit us all. And maybe someday we'll see Bakersfield on one of these lists. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bolin. There are 2 more speakers, but I believe we have run out of 1 minute. Go ahead and call the final speaker, please.
We have Leanna Harper.
Okay. Next speaker then.
Michelle Harper.
Welcome. Please introduce yourself. You have about 1.5 minutes left. Thank you.
My name is Michelle Hart. Thank you, Mayor Go and council members for hearing us about chickens. I'm looking forward to the ordinance changing. Several years ago, I had chickens, didn't realize that I read the ordinance wrong, and code enforcement contacted me, so I gave up my chickens. And I didn't realize how much emotional support my family got from the chickens. It created a daily routine of gathering eggs in the morning, feeding, cleaning up after them, tucking them in at night. I'm passing around a picture of my 5 girls on my arms getting ready to get tucked in every evening at dusk. When I had to give them up, I didn't realize how much they helped our anxiety, loneliness, the entertainment alone. You know, while dogs and cats and horses have been therapy animals, I found out that our hens were as well. And I think most people are going to do the right thing by their chickens. Of course, there's going to be exceptions, and that other agency said that they would help take care of it. And if the chickens' wings are clipped, they're not going to fly over people's fences. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Harp. And thank you to all of you who have made comments, and we appreciate your engagement in the civic process. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Under workshops, we have fiscal year 2021 first quarter budget update.
Thank you. Mr. Clegg.
Madam Mayor and City Council, pleased to bring forward a check-in on financial matters to the city. Mr. Chris Hewitt will be providing this presentation. Just a couple of context-setting comments. We went into this budget year with a very conservative budget that has served us well to be able to weather the storms of the pandemic. Today, we bring some cautiously optimistic information that some of our projections for year-end reductions in revenues and costs were not as dramatic as we had expected. There are some year-end balances that we're going to reflect in this presentation, but also want to remind that we're still in the middle of a pandemic. We want to be very conservative and cautious, and would look to mid-year to have some conversations about actions that we might take. But this is a nice update after our first quarter here. Go ahead, Mr. Hewitt.
Thank you, Mr. Clegg. Honorable Mayor, City Council members, Chris Hewitt with the Manager's Office. As Mr. Clegg mentioned, staff did commit during the budget process to bring back more frequent, brief budget updates, again, due to the unprecedented public health and economic circumstances surrounding COVID-19. So today we're going to review some key items that have seen some changes or updates since we last spoke. The first is going to be some end-of-year numbers for fund balances, or end-of-year balances for the general fund and for the public safety and vital services measure. Talk a little bit about our latest sales and use tax receipts and some impacts to those, to the revenue source. Talk a little bit about some development data and trends that we're seeing in that area. Talk a little bit about the public safety and vital services measure recruitment efforts to date, our CARES Act funding, our reserve and CalPERS update, and then finally a little bit about the fiscal year 21-22 budget process, which is right around the corner, if you can believe it. This slide I pulled actually from the last presentation before this council adopted the budget. It's really a summary of all the different areas in which this council approved a budget with some major contingencies within it based upon the unknown circumstances at that time, and really still to this day, we still have unknown circumstances ahead. So we do still have a general fund hiring freeze in place. Of course, there are some exemptions and exceptions to that we'll talk about in a moment. We asked our departments going into the budget process to control all discretionary costs. The council adopted a budget that included some significantly decreased revenue projections as opposed to when we started our budget process earlier in the calendar year. We looked at ways we could again supplement and meet those reserve levels for the year that the council had approved, essentially bolstering our rainy day funds. We also set aside some projects in what was called a contingency bucket out of the PSVS plan. Essentially, those projects will not move forward until at least mid-year when we have a better sense and more information in our back pocket of our revenue trends. Again, finally, we talked a little bit about the fiscal year 2019-20, so the last fiscal year's fund balance. We didn't have the number at the time we do today that I'll share with you, But we did recommend at that point in time that that amount be held in contingency again because of the unknowns that we are facing. We also talked a little bit about the fact that we did plan to use CARES Act funds to mitigate some of those direct costs, and that was built into the budget as well. Again, I'll update you on that in just a moment. A little bit about the fiscal year 2019 year-end fund balances. These amounts generally include revenues that exceeded our revised projections, savings from positions, both salary and benefits, costs that were budgeted, but that were not expended because those positions were vacant for a number of different reasons throughout any part of the fiscal year. And then any of the appropriations or funds that were within our department operating budgets that were not encumbered or expended by the end of the fiscal year. That's probably a much smaller amount of the three, but these numbers that I'm going to share with you are really cumulative of these three major areas. So within the general fund, each and every year, for as long as I've been with the manager's office, this council adopts a budget that in part includes essentially a rollover of part of the fund balance into the new year. So what the $2.6 million represents is everything essentially above that amount that was rolled into the budget. So this is, again, dollars at the end of the year for a variety of different reasons, as I talked about within the general fund, that were not necessary to balance the budget that we're currently in. And that would be potentially available for future uses, absent some recommendations we're going to make this evening. For the public safety and vital services measure, that amount made up of relatively the same kind of components is $15.1 million. Again, this is a new revenue source, and frankly, the revenue projections that we outlined for the first year were rather conservative. And so the majority of what you're seeing there is revenues that exceeded projections. Of course, there were vacant positions for parts of the year and other appropriations that were not expended in that first year. But again, a lot of that was revenue exceeding projections. Again, there's not any action recommended for the use of these funding, these two amounts tonight. And I know Mr. Clegg has some additional comments to this point.
Thank you, Mr. Hewitt, and Mayor and Council. Just wanted to emphasize my strong recommendation that we consider these funds as a one-time funds, that we don't consider these ongoing funds to program for our operations. I would strongly recommend at mid-year that we consider some of our known costs and our reserves as appropriate places to use these. It's fortunate that we have, this large amount of one-time funds, but I think it would be wisdom to put it towards these large costs that we know are looming in front of us and our reserves to meet our goals sooner. And so I think we don't know quite enough about what the COVID impacts will be to our revenues in the first 2 quarters of the new fiscal year. And we'll have that information when we come back at mid-year. And I think it would be, again, my recommendation to wait to program any of these dollars until that time and expect a recommendation from me that we set those aside for some of our known costs.
Thank you, Mr. Clegg.
Thank you, City Manager Clegg. Randy McKeegan, taking over a little bit for Chris here, give him a rest. Randy McKeegan, Finance Director for the City of Bakersfield. Good evening, Mayor, Council members. I'm going to really touch on the more significant revenue source that we continue to see within the general fund, and really look at history, background, and then sort of where we are looking at how the impacts of that revenue stream due to COVID. So just again, based on some history, you know that this revenue stream is dependent on business activity. So with the COVID pandemic, there were obviously effects on this revenue stream going forward. So again, this revenue stream, the sales tax includes both the Bradley Burns, which is our general regular sales tax we've always historically collected. It also includes the PSVS, or Public Safety Vital Services revenue stream, totaling over $139 million in total. So again, it's a very significant revenue stream. So with the effect of COVID, there were some negative impacts. If we look at the history again, March 19th, they had a stay-at-home order. So that had some negative effects on a number of industries, specifically hotels, restaurants, gas stations, service stations had the most impact. Surprisingly, there were some industries that actually had increases when you compare this last quarter to the previous quarter in 2019. That included construction and food and drugs, which was actually not surprising. But those increases did not offset the significant decreases in the other industries that we continue to see for the first 2 quarters of 2020. To mitigate the impact of COVID on these businesses, the state set forth some plans to really help them through these tough times. Included in those plans was a deferral of the first quarter payment, which was due at the end of April for most businesses, and allowed them to defer that payment till July. At the end of July. They also set up an extension plan for smaller businesses, which allowed them to defer at no interest the payment of that first quarter all the way till April of 2021. Based on our analysis and the information we received from our sales tax consultant, that's not a significant level of our business revenue for that particular source, but they were allowed an extension. We also saw, based on our analysis, that a number of businesses that actually didn't have permission or deferral allowed from the state did not make their first quarter payment. So again, that resulted in some decreases in our collections. A little more background, if you recall, the revenue streams for sales tax have a 3-month delay. So for example, we get the July estimate for 2020 is actually received in September. At the end of September, and our final numbers for the first quarter just ended. We're not going to get those until the end of November, and we're not going to be able to have data until the middle of December to really analyze the results of the third quarter of 2020. So with that background, I wanted to really kind of touch on the impacts of COVID that had on, specifically here, the Bradley Burns source of revenue. So what you see here is a chart comparing the first quarter of 2020 and the second quarter of 2020 to the same periods of 2019. So what you see, that red amount of 22%, we had a decrease of revenue between first quarter 2019 and first quarter 2020 of 22%. The revenue went from $18 million in 2019 to $14 million in 2020. Alternatively, and surprisingly, we saw an increase in the second quarter of 2020, actual cash receipts of 1.5%. So we actually saw more revenue coming in, actual cash revenue coming in between comparing from 2019 and 2020. So we went from $18.3 million to 18.6. Those numbers really are skewed based on the information on those plans that the state allowed that we talked about earlier. The deferrals, the extensions, the non-payments really created a skewed number for the first quarter of 2020. When we look at the analysis, $1.7 million that we received in the second quarter was actually related to expenditure or receipts that should have been recorded in the first quarter of 2020, and alternatively that increased or skewed the second quarter, so we had an increase when there was actually a decrease. We'll get to that later. We also estimate that $834,000 of the amounts that should have been received in the second quarter of 2020 will not be received until subsequent quarters again. So with analysis that we've done and our sales tax consultant done, we've actually kind of redrawn the picture of the comparison between first quarter and second quarter of 19 and 20. When we take in the adjustments and those numbers we talked about earlier about second quarter and first quarter numbers being in the wrong place, we actually see that a decrease in the first quarter, actually the actual decrease, instead of 22%, was actually 3.5%, a reduction from $17.2 to $16.7 million. And again, the decrease in the second quarter, instead of an increase of 1.5%, we see a decrease of 8.7%. Again, these are comparing actual receipts for each quarter between 19 and 20. So again, this gives us a better picture, a better trend line of the activity of the Bradley Burns specifically over the last 2 quarters. And again, it makes a little more sense compared to what we saw previously. When we look at these numbers, we look at the analysis from our sales tax consultant, we do see that the numbers that we are budgeting out through both the end of last year and through the end of 2021 in line with our budget. So we see that the trends are what we expected. We reduced our budget accordingly when we knew COVID was going to impact our revenue streams, and we've reduced it. And based on our analysis currently, we are in line to meet the revenue estimates by the end of the fiscal year. I want to really touch briefly on the PSVS revenue stream. Those of you, we know that this revenue was approved the first quarter of 2019. So this is the first time we actually have a full 12-month period to really analyze and compare the previous quarters to this quarter. So we can compare second quarter 2019 to second quarter 2020. When we do that, we see an increase actually occurred between those two quarters in this revenue stream of 1.6%. That relates to the increase in online sales that have occurred over the last that quarter, and the increase in purchases made outside the county. These are things like large, heavy equipment vehicles. That revenue comes directly back to the city. So those amounts, again, created an increase. Again, just like Bradley Burns, we also saw some skewing of our actual receipts. $1.3 million of deferred late payments were receipted in 2020. I'm sorry, the first quarter of 2020, when they were applicable to the first quarter of 2020. And then we plan on seeing, again, like with Bradley Burns, we plan on seeing some deferrals. Amounts that should have been receipted in the second quarter of 2020 will be receipted in subsequent quarters, again, skewing the numbers a little bit. But we have those adjustments, and we can really create the right trend line when we take those adjustments into account. Again, based on our analysis, our revenue estimates for the year end are on track for this revenue stream as well. We don't suspect, based on the activity we've seen, any levels of reduction beyond what we've already built into the budget for year end. Now, with that, I'm going to toss it back to Chris.
Thank you, Randy. Just a couple other slides we wanted to make you aware of. One of the data points or collection of data that we try to track really on a monthly basis, Mr. Boyle and his team put together a much more elaborate spreadsheet than what I'm showing you here, but I wanted to pull out, I think, what are some relevant numbers. This is year to date through the end of September 30th of 2020. That's what that 2020 column represents for some of these different permitting categories. That number in 2019 is the equivalent number through September 30th of 2019, so it is an apples-to-apples comparison. I won't go through all the numbers in detail, but what we're seeing is that our permitting levels have not significantly dropped off. In many cases, we're seeing some increases, multifamily, residential alterations. Again, folks are at home. We are seeing, more of them doing work on their house. Maybe I'm being played off. So we are seeing some very positive numbers in some of these categories. So we just wanted to share that with you. Again, this is one of those areas that we look at very closely each and every month and track. And to date, we are seeing continued positive trending. A little bit about hiring. As I mentioned, our general fund has essentially a hiring freeze for most positions that either were vacant going through the budget process last year or that have become vacant. There are exemptions for public safety. We're not holding police officer positions or other relevant public safety positions vacant. Those are free to be filled. We are allowing some backfilling of positions where there have been promotions within the city, and so that is being allowed, but that's really a very small percentage. We have 195 vacancies citywide right now. Again, that's all funds across the organization. We are looking to evaluate that freeze as part of our mid-year analysis, and we're hopeful if revenues continue to trend in line with projections that we'd be able to allow departments to begin to hire these positions. They are budgeted, they are authorized. It's just a matter of making sure that we hold those vacant for a period of time as a strategic measure to not be in potentially a worse position if revenues did take a negative trend. Under the Public Safety and Vital Services measure, this council has authorized a total of 212 full-time positions over the last 2 years. 169 positions are filled, so that's roughly 80%. Of those 43 positions that remain vacant, we have recruitment activity underway in 34, meaning there are several steps. Some of these positions are in background checks, which are pretty much the last step before they can actually come in and begin. Others are in interviews or oral panels. But again, a lot of activity. We've made really good headway in hiring these positions. I did want to pull out police hiring specifically in PSVS. Our Human Resources Department and our police department have made great strides in ensuring that we meet that priority and that community need to place more sworn officers on the street and provide for those support staff that support those officers. Excuse me. I'm pleased to say that 79 out of the 88 authorized positions, both sworn and civilian, within the police department are filled at this point in time. We have active recruitments and pending academies for the remainder of those positions. Those sworn positions specifically are pretty much all police officer positions. And as you know, that timeline to bring an individual through all the background and the application process and the testing process, the physical fitness process into the academy and through the academy, it can take some time. But again, the training center off 4646 California that this council authorized the purchase of and the renovation, that facility is essentially being used each and every day in our effort again to reach 100 new positions in the police department on the sworn side in 3 years. CARES Act. This is the plan that this council approved in August. I won't again go through every category, but it was $33.5 million that the city received from the state. This council authorized close to 60% of that go towards external stakeholders, I'll call them, small businesses, nonprofits, rental and mortgage assistance, public-private partnerships, community awareness campaigns. And I'm pleased to give you an update tonight on where we're at. The city has incurred and accrued to date about almost $10 million in direct costs, and that is being covered with a portion of that CARES Act budget that I just talked about. I put a note in there that in our general fund budget, we were projecting that $3 million would be covered for direct costs. So again, I'm pleased to tell this council this evening that we're well above that, and those again are very legitimate costs that the city has incurred to again mitigate for COVID-19. This council approved rental assistance at a level of $5 million. $2 million of that has been expended through HAC, the Housing Authority of Kern. We're working with them again to make sure that remaining $3 million is expended prior to December. Also looked at several ways to assist businesses and nonprofits. And again, we have 3 programs that have been propped up. The grant program that this council approved was $3 million. We've awarded about $385,000 in grants to date. I am pleased to say that both myself and Randy and others have been working with our local small business communities to get the word out. We do have several pending applications. We do believe that number is going to increase significantly in the coming weeks. I would encourage anyone listening or in the audience this evening, if you're not familiar with this program, it's geared towards small businesses of 25 or less employees. And essentially, again, it's a grant program, not a forgivable loan program. And we would encourage you to go to bakersfieldcity.us/BCares for more information. We partnered with the county on 2 other programs, and I'm pleased again to say that on the forgivable loan side, all $3 million that was committed has been awarded and is in the process of being dispersed. On the nonprofit grant side, the city committed $2 million. We are about a month into that agreement with the county, and they are standing by waiting to give us an update. So I should have something. We'll likely include an update to you here soon, but we are pending an update. I can tell you, again, this is another one of those programs where if nonprofits are not aware of it or have not applied, please do. There is money available to that program. Just quickly running through some of these others, there are 4 agreements on tonight's agenda totaling over $400,000 for public-private partnerships. A lot of this revolves around technical assistance and outreach to support our small business community and our nonprofit community. We're working again with hospitals and other stakeholders on some community outreach. Again, this council approved about $1 million or so for that. As a bucket, tonight's agenda has an item that would authorize the city manager to enter into an agreement up to $700,000 for this outreach. Again, we'd be partnering with local stakeholders to get that done. And again, the intent there was to begin, again, to promote activities amongst our community that would allow our economy to reopen and get through that blueprint that the state has put upon us in a much quicker manner. The Brundage Lane Navigation Center, $2 million is necessary to allocate to that project. Midstream had to change some of the setup, some of the infrastructure to be essentially COVID ready and to mitigate for COVID in that environment. So there were some necessary costs that can be recaptured through the CARES Act, and we are reconciling those right now. We do anticipate returning to the council in mid-November with a reconciliation of kind of where we're at. And we'll need to make probably some final reallocations to ensure essentially that come the end of December, there is no money left on the table, meaning that the CARES Act funds that have come to the city of Bakersfield will be expended one way or another for legitimate purposes, obviously. But we do not anticipate, and staff would not recommend that we leave any of that funding on the table to go back to either the state or the federal government. Real quick, we'll have an update on the reserve policy and a couple of other items. I'm going to turn this over to Randy once again, and then we'll come back to wrap up. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. So as I said, we're going to give a reserve update, where we stand currently on the cumulative reserves for the city of Bakersfield. If you recall, in June of 2018, this council approved a resolution setting forth a plan to establish a larger rainy day reserve, setting it up for 2 months or 16% of the general fund's operating budget. It also touched on the need to increase our facility replacement reserves. Those funds are used to deal with emergency repairs, maintenance to buildings and other city facilities. It also talked about setting up a pension stabilization trust fund, Section 115 trust. This is similar to what we've set up for the OPEB or the retiree medical program. It is managed in the same way, and it also reduces the liability that continues to grow within our pension plans. So the council approved that in June, and so in that plan, I want to really talk about, it assumes that we meet the revenue budgeted revenues or exceed the revenue projections before those reserves are actually increased. So the caveat was that we could set aside the plan to fund these reserves, but we needed to make sure that the revenue was there before we move forward with the funding of those reserve balances. So moving forward, with that understanding, we look at 2018-19, we see a comparison of when that plan was approved, and then going forward to 2019-20, and then the proposal for this upcoming year. You'll see that we had $30 million, a little over $30 million established in our reserves at the end of 2018-19. 26 million of that was the rainy day fund that we've established. And so we budgeted forward an amount. The plan actually had set aside $12 million, but because, again, of COVID, the uncertainty moving forward, we only budgeted, or we only funded a little over, close to $9 million in reserve increases this last fiscal year. You'll see that we increased the facility reserve by $1 million, and then we increased the rainy day fund to $34.2 million. So going forward, again, we talked about the plan, but we didn't fund it fully. We have budgeted amounts currently in the 2021 fiscal year to increase the reserves, but we're proposing it to really to backfill or make up that shortage from 1920 and really fund early. If you look at the plan from 2018, we weren't planning to fund the stabilization fund until 2022. So we're actually, based on the availability, and we're talking about this, these are just a proposal. We will move forward with this if the funds are available. We're going to increase our total reserves in the general fund to $43.8 million, increase the facility reserve by $4 million, and again, begin the funding of the Section 115 trust by adding $1.5 million to that trust. If this plan moving forward actually occurs, it actually allows us to meet that two-month reserve plan that we have. We're looking forward to actually accomplishing further down, because that $43.8 million exceeds 16.7% of our current operating budget for 2021. So that's the plan. Again, it's just going to be based on, as I said, the caveat of year-end revenues actually occurring based on our budget. But if those occur, then we have $15 million available that we can supplement the reserves with. With that, I'll get back to Chris.
Thanks again, Randy. Just wanted to talk a little bit, and I know Mr. Clegg may have a few comments here about the 2021 budget process. Again, staff starts that process in earnest in January every year for a budget adoption by this council in June for a fiscal year that starts July 1 of every year. Some significant changes on the horizon for next budget process will be the introduction of a more robust participatory budgeting process. And I know, again, Mr. Clegg will likely comment on that in just a moment. One of the things we have done in the interim, and that we will be doing more public outreach on, is simply established an email address that we're going to begin to promote in various forms and functions that will allow the public, in part, to reach us if they can't make what will be probably more of a formal structure and a participatory budgeting process, to submit ideas to us in just the same manner that the public that does go through maybe the more formal participatory budgeting exercise would be able to do. So again, we wanted to make that available. We're going to have a council goals workshop in the spring. And as we went through this last year, we all, at least on the staff side, understand that those council goals really remain the framework for our budget development. And we want to make sure that we get ahead of, I think, the meat and potatoes of our budget process. So there's a very linear kind of look at when those goals are reviewed and discussed by this council with public and community input, and when the budget is developed. And then finally, phase 3 of PSVS hiring, that's on the horizon as well. Again, that's going to predominantly revolve around the public safety and police department, with several likely positions that would be based on feedback input by this council, based on those priorities that this council would like to see accomplished in future years. So I'm going to pause before we get to our final slide, just for Mr. Clegg to make some comments here as well.
Thanks, Chris. You handled it very well, Mayor and Council. Just wanted to reflect a little bit more about what the participatory budgeting process may look like. We heard a lot of feedback last year. It was a constricted time frame. We had to pivot, very quickly around COVID, and it didn't leave us a lot of time to digest the information, receive public comment. And so I would reflect that, there are certain cities, one example is Durham, North Carolina, where they have a specific voting process where the community weighs in, tabulations on a participatory budget. That's not what we're talking about in this coming year. That may be a consideration council wants to recommend to staff in the future. What this is about is just creating a little more opportunity for input, for comments. We've established this email site that folks can already begin giving their suggestions or recommendations related to the budget, and take a little more time to digest the budget through the spring. And so we look forward to creating some of those opportunities, and also working with our Public Safety Vital Services Oversight Committee, for example, in having a little more time to digest our budget recommendations for that group as well.
So I believe it's my final slide this evening, is the takeaways. Tonight's action is a simple request of staff to receive and file this presentation. We have several unknowns ahead. We talked a little bit about our sales tax trending negative for 2 quarters. We will have another quarter under our belts when we come back to you at mid-year for another update. Development trends are good for now. We're going to have to, again, continue to monitor those, and we will have updated figures for you here in just a few months. It's no secret to this community, both in the short term and in the longer term, that our oil economy, our oil sector, is threatened for different reasons, both in the short term and the long term. The price of oil locally has not significantly trended upwards over the last several months. We talked a little bit about that during the budget process. I didn't cover it in detail here, but that has not significantly changed. And of course, there are trickle-down effects to our economy there. We have some major and necessary costs on the horizon that we need to be thinking about as we talk about the best place to put, say, fund balances, for example, that are one-time in nature. So we have our enterprise resource program platform that is about 25 years old, and that's really the backbone of everything that we do as staff, from accounting and purchasing and asset management. And so really we need to bring that up to modern standards. That's a significant both time and resource investment, and at the same time too, there's a lot of efficiencies and benefits to our customers, the public, with that update. And we're going to be bringing more information to you on that in the near future. Digital radio project, you all are familiar with that. We are in the process right now of letting that RFP, along with the county, in a joint project to upgrade and modernize our digital radio system for all of our public safety users. And that will be a regional system. Again, it's much needed. Again, we're 25 to 30 years into our current system with radios being repaired through parts on eBay. CalPERS, obviously we have increases that are likely coming in fiscal year 23 due to underperforming of investments for the current year. We're currently evaluating those actuarials. We'll have some more information again to this council in the run-up to mid-year. Again, we want to make sure that as we move forward and we look at our general fund reserves and our reserve plan in general, that's really an investment to protect the taxpayer investment, meaning that if we have those available at our disposal, should revenues take a turn, the intent is to be able to mitigate for a period of time more significant service cuts that would otherwise be necessary, among other things. And then finally, again, as we're talking here this evening, this presentation is a receive and file request with that mid-year budget update coming in January 2021. So again, thank you. Happy to answer any questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hewitt, Mr. McKeegan, and Mr. Clegg. Before we return this to Council for comment and action, Madam Clerk, do we have any public speaker requests for this workshop item?
We have not received any for this item.
Thank you. Councilmember Freeman.
One question to Mr. Clegg. We talked about hiring freezes and open positions, but then we said there's 44, but 34 in process. I'd just like some assurance that we aren't freezing positions in departments where we need people. We're a very lean staff, especially I'm always concerned about the development business, because if we can't process the projects, and I'm always, I get the first call when we don't have enough people processing quickly, but those are immediate jobs. So we all want to get homes built, buildings built. So just public works, planning, and Parks and Rec, we still, our arterials look terrible still. Not bad, terrible. And we talk about branding and wanting to clean up the look of our city. And it's always, well, we don't have people. We don't have people. They're out with COVID. We had a hiring freeze. Well, it just gets worse and worse over the years. And I get all the calls. And they're right. We look terrible when you drive down our streets. Nothing's been trimmed for a year in many places. So dead trees, broken sprinklers. Those are areas I hope we're not, we have the money and they're not big bucks, but I hope we're not holding back on those, because we still have to run a good, clean, good-looking city. So that's my comment. Just please, let's not cut back in those areas.
Thank you, Councilmember Mayor and Council and Councilmember Freeman. To provide some clarity, the public safety and vital services positions, we do not have a hiring freeze. These are these were new dollars that were available to us that, were not fully programmed, and so we've been able to move forward with all of those positions. Our enterprise funds are likewise not experiencing a hiring freeze, and that's reflected for example, development services, those positions that help process our permits and plan checks, those positions are not frozen. On the general fund side, because we saw, close to, $20 million less in revenues projected this year than last year, we had to close that gap through a number of measures. One of those was to budget for vacancy savings. One of those was the CARES Act reimbursements. But we do have the hiring freeze on the general fund. It is impacting Public Works to a degree. It is impacting Parks and Rec, probably more significantly than other departments, Parks and Recreation. And so it was a tough choice through the budget process to say we have to close the budget gap somehow. We are in, as we mentioned tonight, we ended the year in a better position than we anticipated, but we're anxious about these next, 2 quarters to see where we're at. We have about 13 positions, for example, in Parks and Recreation that are general funded positions that we have not hired because of the freeze. It is having some impacts. We've hired temporary and seasonal employees to help with some of the catch-up work that happened as a result of the pandemic and having some staff limitations during that time frame. We are anxious to use some of our PSVS dollars around the Clean City initiative to hire some contracted crews to get out and clean up litter and debris and to do that work. But one of our realities is on the general fund side, we have had some reduction in capacity to help meet those targeted budget numbers.
Well, you have to manage the daily numbers, but I really don't want to hear we say, well, at the end of the year, well, we saved 2 or 3 million and we didn't, but we didn't hire the people we needed to keep our city looking good, and Public Works can hardly function because we run a thin Public Works department to begin with. Those are pretty essential functions, and I just want to be sure if the funds are there that we don't over-conserve, because those are kind of small dollars compared to some of the big things we do. But okay, thank you.
And I would reflect, Councilmember, I appreciate the feedback. We've again been pretty conservative. We plan at mid-year that we'll, we're estimating that we'll be in a good position to be able to move forward in all positions. If there's some council interest in direction and reevaluating our hiring freeze based on some of these numbers, we would welcome that feedback.
Thank you, Councilmember Freeman and Mr. Clegg. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to say I appreciate Councilmember Freeman's comments, and I would echo those concerns as well. And in a time where we are trying to enhance city services, it's unfortunate that we're hit with this economic circumstance. But to the best of our ability, it would be important for us to continue to really deliver high quality services. Although I will disagree, Councilmember Freeman. I think I get the first call from the people, but we can debate that later. I had a quick question for Mr. Hewitt regarding the ERP. What is the estimated cost? Do we have a number yet?
Councilmember Gonzalez, we have gone through a very preliminary assessment. We brought in the Government Finance Officers Association to do some analysis. It's been a long, long time since we've had to evaluate the needs of our organization for this type of platform. We've grown a lot since 1992 or so. That's my long-winded way of telling you that we are not at a point just yet where I can have a refined number. I can probably tell you that it's going to exceed $10 million at the end of the day. It is a big lift, but it's a necessary lift. Again, if you think back to 1992 and the technology that was being used at that time to process information
Sure.
and do workflows and track information, that's essentially what we're working with today. Like any other technology, there's a pretty big lift for something this size.
So give me a timeline. When are we hoping to adopt a new platform?
I would say that at this point in time, we're in the final stages of working with our departments to finish up the evaluation and review that. I would expect that we would have likely a recommendation, I believe, essentially at mid-year, to start to look at putting some funds away for that cost, with the budget process coming right behind that with a more robust timeline and plan of action for RFP essentially, and then implementation.
Perfect, perfect. And then regarding the digital radio project, is that still estimated to be around 17 million for the city?
Correct.
Portion?
And again, that process is a joint process with the county,
right,
for a regional system. So there are going to be some economy of scales. Once we get through the RFP process, we'll have a more refined number, but $17 million is most likely the top end at this point where we think we're going to be. This council, I believe, has approved about $8 million for that, or $9 million, and then we're looking to likely program the rest of that here in the near future. Once the RFP goes out, again, that'll be kind of the next checkpoint. And so I think we're going to have that out pretty quick on the streets, just working with the county to get that done. But again, mid-year is going to be a great checkpoint for us to give you that more definite timeline.
Perfect, thank you.
And if I may, Mayor and Council, just take the opportunity to reflect on those two items, as well as some of those pending CalPERS cost increases. From my experience in the city of Stockton, we took on a 30-year ERP replacement, which was a little more hefty than ours, but still significant. And our budget estimates were closer to the $15 to $20 million for that project. It depends sometimes on which components and modules you include, but I would expect a number. I mean, no one likes getting bad news, but I want to be transparent with the council. That's going to be a big expense. I'm expecting $15 million to $20 million for our project. And if you think about that number, as well as the digital radios, with an additional, $7 to $8 million in this next budget year to fund the full $17 million estimate. And we already were looking at 3 to 4 years out the peak of CalPERS costs with the market conditions that have been experienced this year. That may push out to continue to have that peak for a few extra years, and so you don't have those one-time funds come available that often, and setting aside some of those funds for both to complete our reserves goals and to have funding set aside for some of these large projects. It allows us to not eat into those budgets in future years. We're fortunate to have the PSVS funding to get at our priority issues, but if we're trying to fund really big projects all out of those annual budgets, then it really eats into the number of priority things we can take on each year.
Thank you, Councilmember Gonzalez. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Kind of layering in on Bruce's and Andre's statement, code enforcement isn't public safety per se, but they daily work with the police department when there's a burned out property or dilapidated property that needs to be boarded up or boarded up in the middle of the night. Code enforcement is the unit that takes care of that. So I would ask that we look to, because they're on the freeze list too, look to be able to do something with that department. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Rivera.
Thank you, Mayor. So all in all, I mean, by comparison, I guess where I've seen other budgets in what I might have described as far less difficult times, this is actually, I think, really impressive and a great place to be. I just got a technical question, and maybe I'm not understanding how it works correctly. But on that $2.6 million general fund, I think you described it as a surplus. Did I understand that correctly?
Correct.
I'm curious how that, because in years past, I always thought our rollover was significantly higher. So I'm curious, does the $2.6 million include, say, the dollars associated with the 195 vacancies, or is that viewed separately?
That's viewed separately. The vacancies that we budget, those positions are budgeted within the budget itself. And what that $2.6 million is at the end of the year, we estimate, you're right, that number that you're referring to is probably what, 16 or 17 million dollars that is available at the end of the year on average in the general fund that we essentially roll into the new budget year. This 2.6 is essentially on top of that, if that gives you some perspective. So this is above and beyond what we had rolled into the current year budget. So it's again not committed to anything in the current fiscal year.
Okay. Well, Scott, that's even better news. We actually have more money than we budgeted, which I think is really impressive. I would be curious, and I think this is a moot point since I won't be sitting here in January, but I think how we treat that rollover dollars, I think is something this council should talk a little bit more about, because I have always kind of thought that maybe there was some reserve treatment, that type of savings at the end of the year should get, and I know we've in the past at least treated it differently. Otherwise, really happy to see that participatory budgeting is happening. I look forward to seeing a more robust platform. Email is great, but I think to the extent you can deploy polling and request feedback we're on social media now everywhere as well. I think there are a lot of ways for us to engage the community in different ways, and I'm very excited that we're making that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Rivera. Mr. Clegg, I also echo Councilmember Freeman's comments. We have weekly conversations about the cleanliness and the upkeep of our city, and I know for all of us that's very important. Vice Mayor.
Motion to receive and file.
Motion. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Vice Mayor Parlier,
Aye.
Councilmember Rivera,
Aye.
Councilmember Gonzalez,
Aye.
Councilmember Weir,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Freeman,
Aye.
and Councilmember Sullivan.
Aye.
Motion is unanimously approved.
Thank you. Let's take a 10-minute break and come back at 7, please.
I am here.
Okay, very good. All right, Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Under workshops, item B, citywide solar electricity generating project. A staff memorandum on this item transmitting correspondence in support and in opposition has been received.
Thank you. Mr. Clegg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. Public Works Director Nick Fiddler provided this presentation.
Madam Clerk, can you please bring up the presentation? Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. I'm Nick Fiddler, Public Works Director for the City of Bakersfield. The city has completed several energy efficiency projects in the recent years that have reduced energy usage, resulting in significant savings to the city's operating budgets over the life cycle of each project. These projects have included conversion of building lighting, safety lighting, street lighting, and traffic signal head LED conversions. In addition, there has been several enhancements to the HVAC and operating systems for the facilities. Staff is now proposing to add solar to 8 facilities and battery storage systems to 3 facilities to continue the efforts to reduce electrical costs to our annual operating budgets. The city has completed 2 solar projects in the past, wastewater treatment plant number 3 and most recently the Amtrak station. Both were funded with grants. However, staff is now proposing that addition of solar and energy storage systems through a power purchase agreement, as there are no grants available at this time. Staff has reviewed several options to implement solar and energy storage systems and even hired an independent energy consultant to review the feasibility of both. And ultimately, staff has found that utilizing a statewide request for proposal, an RFP, being the most efficient and cost-effective method to meet the council's goals of improving the city's financial sustainability. As you can see in the presentation, the program will result in a minimum of $1 million in energy savings in the first year of operation without the city spending any funding. The program is turnkey in the fact that staff does not have to coordinate environmental, design, or construction, nor coordinate the efforts of PG&E for the interconnections. The solar system will be on-site, so no cost will be lost in PG&E distribution systems. Some sites will provide solar canopies, will ultimately provide for shaded parking and enhance security through LED lighting. The energy storage systems will help reduce electrical demand charges when utility rates are at their highest rates. I wanted to walk you through a timeline of events to show how staff has done their due diligence in analyzing our options. Staff has analyzed solar over the last 10 years. In fact, in 2011, when I was General Services Superintendent and responsible for monitoring the usage of utility bills for all city facilities, I had firsthand experience and coordinated efforts with various vendors to look at solar system options. Unfortunately, at that time, the concepts that we were exploring were impacted by the high-speed rail alignment, so we could not move forward. As you recall, the original high-speed rail alignment followed along the BNSF railway alignment, which could have impacted the Corporation Yard, the PD headquarters parking lot, the City Hall South parking lot, and the Rabobank Arena Convention Center parking lot that was just south of the BNSF railroad lines. So in fall of 2017, the organization named SPUR, School Projects for Utility Rates Reduction, performed a statewide competitive RFP that awarded a master contract to Forefront Power. As earlier discussed, the city hired an independent energy consultant in the fall of 2018 to evaluate city facilities, solar and energy storage systems. In October of 2018, the High-Speed Rail Authority adopted the locally generated alignment, which moved the high-speed rail alignment from the BNSF alignment up to the Union Pacific Railroad alignment, which is north of 204, allowing us to move forward with our projects, the proposed projects at the Corporation Yard, the PD headquarters, City Hall South and Annex, and the Rabobank Arena, now Mechanics Bank and Convention Center. In summer of 2019, City began meeting with Spur and Forefront to review their program. Fall of 2019, Spur extended their master agreement with Forefront for 1 year and secured reduced pricing for public agencies, offering the city an improved rate over previous projects completed by Spur and Forefront Power. From fall of 2019 to spring of 2020, Forefront started their evaluation of over 950 city-owned meters, electrical meters, conducted site visits, met with staff to complete a comprehensive feasibility study, and provided a savings analysis to staff. In spring of 2020, staff conducted customer reference and qualification checks and then selected the final projects to advance. Forefront Power submitted applications on behalf of the city for energy storage incentives. The city's applications have been received and are on a list waiting for additional funding to become available. Staff has reviewed contracts from City Attorney's Office with City Attorney's Office, and here we are today with staff recommending approval of the resolution and the contracts. At this time, I would like to introduce Kevin Flanagan, who will give us a little bit of update on the SPUR program, the school project rate for utility rate reduction.
Hello. Good evening, Mayor Go, council members. My name is Kevin Flanagan. I represent an organization called SPUR, and thank you for having me here tonight and for the opportunity to speak with you. Founded in 1989, SPUR is a joint powers authority originally formed by K-12 school districts and community colleges. We are not a company. We are a public agency created by other public agencies. And what we do is we advocate on behalf of public agencies and act as a buying consortium to help public agencies reduce utility costs. Today, we have over 250 public agency members representing thousands of facilities across the state. As a buying consortium, we leverage our massive buying power along with our internal expertise to develop cooperative buying programs to help public agencies reduce utility costs and increase project value. By leveraging the piggybackable RFPs that we issue to the marketplace, public agencies can streamline their procurement processes so they can more effectively capture incentives before they decline, secure low project pricing, realize project savings sooner, and we have pre-negotiated contracts negotiated by our expert staff with very favorable terms and conditions so that public agencies have reduced project risk both during construction and the life cycle of the project. All of our programs are funded through transparent administrative fees, typically approximating 3% of project cost at no out-of-pocket cost to public agencies. Our cooperative buying program for solar and energy storage is called the Renewable Energy Aggregated Procurement Program, or REAP program. Through the REAP program, we conducted a statewide request for proposals. We partnered with Fresno Unified School District on that RFP. We used 8 of their physical sites as well as 7 additional sample sites. We stipulated very specific inclusions, exclusions, and assumptions in that RFP because the goal of the RFP was to get apples-to-apples bids. All the major vendors that do work for public agencies, like solar projects and energy storage projects, competed in that RFP process. And through a very robust evaluation and vetting process, we selected Forefront Power as the winning vendor. We, Spur, then entered into a master contract with Forefront Power that memorializes the pricing and favorable terms and conditions that public agencies like Bakersfield can piggyback off of in lieu of running your own lengthy RFP process. Importantly, at the end of 2019, Spur granted Forefront Power a 1-year extension on the master contract, and through that process secured even lower pricing for public agencies. The REAP program is an innovative and proven procurement vehicle for California public agencies. It has been vetted and used by over 40 public agencies across the state to procure solar and energy storage, including the City of Fresno, who recently contracted for a project twice the size of the project that's being considered tonight. Bakersfield College, which is contracted for projects not only at its major campus here in Bakersfield, but also at its Delano Center and the district office downtown. Bakersfield City School District, which is contracted for 4 phases of projects through the REAP program. And Taft College. We are also proud to have the support today of the Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce, the Bakersfield Association of Realtors, and local labor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flanagan. Mr. Fidler?
Thank you, Kevin. From this, moving on to the next slide. Sorry, thank you. Moving on to the next slide. The graph to the left shows that currently the city is spending approximately $6 million annually in utility costs. The side to the right shows an indication of savings of approximately $1.1 million in its first year of production. So on the right-hand side of the slide, we can see that on-site solar solutions, we're proposing 8.9 megawatts across 8 sites, which is 62% of the energy offset. Energy storage systems, we're at 3 sites, will produce 4.5 megawatts. As Kevin initially indicated, the city has no capital outlay for the implementation of these systems. The city will save $1.1 million in year 1 and anticipates to receive $45.3 million over a 20-year program. There are no operation and maintenance costs associated to the city. It is all included with the program, so the staff will not be having to go out and maintain the systems nor make any repairs or clean them. There are ground-mounted systems are obviously the most efficient designs. However, solar carport structures provide shaded parking and LED lighting for security. The table on the top provides the proposed solar sites, the 3 battery storage sites, and proposed saving for each site in year 1 and the cumulative for 20 years. The first site that's shown on there is wastewater treatment plant number 3. It has both a solar system and a storage battery system. The second site is green waste recycling facility, which has both a solar system and a battery storage system. The third site is Valley Children's Eye Center, which only has a solar system, and then Mechanics Bank Arena, which only has a battery storage system. The Corporation Yard, located on Truxton Avenue, has a solar system, and the City Hall South and Annex, which is this facility, has a solar system, obviously a carport system. The Police Department, also a carport solar system. Mesa Marin Sports Complex, a ground mount solar system. The Park at Riverwalk, a carport solar system. So for a total savings of over 20-year program of $45,307,000. The bottom graph just shows a cumulative savings for the 20-year program. So the power purchase agreement rates are based on competitive bid and were further reduced in 2019 when the agreement was extended for an additional year. There are no costs to the city to implement this program, and annual savings can be continued through controlled through a capped construction contingency in the pre-negotiated agreements. Staff will not have to provide operations or maintenance to the systems. We currently have 2 systems that we have to contract out for those facilities to maintain and clean, which are out-of-pocket costs annually. Forefront Power guarantees 95% performance production, which is above industry standard, which is typically ranges between 80 to 90% on commercial solar. The city would retain the renewable energy credits where other companies would sell them. The city can also claim the environmental sustainability of the systems in our efforts to go green, reducing our carbon footprint. Liquidated damages for construction delays will ensure the projects are completed in a timely manner so benefits can be received early. Forefront's proposal has a 20-year PPA terms, and there is flexible buyout options. The financial benefits to utilizing the REAP program could result in approximately $11 million savings over the lifetime of the program by acting now. The savings are a result of a $1.1 million savings in the first year, which would be lost if we do not move forward. The benefit from lifetime net metering, or more formally known as NIM 2.0, is approximately $5.1 million over the lifetime. Utility companies are constantly trying to strip the value of solar by paying less for energy that is placed on the utility grid for use at a later point in time. Utility companies are proposing NIM 3.0, which would lower the value of energy, resulting in less savings to the city. Locking into the program now would secure NIM 2.0 for the 20-year term of the system. The federal tax credit steps down each year. It is currently at 26% and will step down to 22% in January 2021, which could result in a $3.2 million loss in savings over the lifetime of the system if not acted upon soon. This could even further reduce the process if delayed until 2022, as the federal tax credit will reduce to 10%. SPUR has applied for the storage incentives on behalf of the city. The city could be at risk if losing its place in line for these incentives if we do not move forward. The REAP program saves time. There will be a 12 to 18 month delay through an RFP selection process, which then puts incentives and current solar framework at risk. The program saves resources. Unfortunately, due to current economy and what we just recently talked about in the previous presentation, staff levels are down with frozen positions, and we do not have the resources to expedite an RFP process and maintain our current workload. To bring a consultant on board to oversee the RFP process would also take time and expenses. We anticipate an RFP process could take anywhere from 12 to 18 months to complete, to get back to the step we are at right now. This slide shows a comparison of using the REAP program to accelerate the project in comparison to utilizing the RFP process. At best case, there would be a minimum of 12-month delay in going through an RFP process, which could result in putting several incentives at risk. In order to go out for an RFP, we'd first have to draft the RFP, working with a consultant, which would take 2 to 3 months, then put the RFP out to bid for advertisement to the solar industry and allow them enough time to build together their qualifications. Once we shortlist the qualifications, then we'd have to give the consultants enough time to analyze all of our city electrical meters so they can develop a proposal. That alone would take 5 to 6 months to process. Then meeting with the 3 qualified proposals and then developing a recommended list to the council, and then going through the council process would take at least 1 to 2 additional months. So there is a significant delay in following through all those different steps that will be required to get back to where we are tonight. The city could miss out on the current 26 federal tax credits, which could go as low as 10% if we extend past 14 months to complete the RFP process. The city could risk losing the solar framework of NIM 2.0, which would reduce credits from the utility company for the energy replaced on the grid, risk losing the battery storage incentives. In addition, the city would lose out on the first year of approximately 1.1 in energy savings if not more due to extended delay. In conclusion, on the solar site and storage will result in significant savings to the city with no out-of-pocket costs. The system will be turnkey and require no maintenance or operation costs to the city. The REAP program provides capped contingencies for unknown utility interconnections. The system will provide approximately $45 million in energy savings over the project lifetime. Not only it benefit the general fund, but it also protects the city's sewer and refuse rates to help keep them as the lowest in the state. The REAP program was a competitive RFP which was run statewide to get scales of economy, ultimately lowering agency cost, and has been proven by over 40 agencies that have been repeat customers to that program. Spur and Forefront Power have local experience with Bakersfield City School Districts, the Kern Community College District, Bakersfield City or Community College, their district office, their Delano Center, and the Taft Community College. At this point, next steps, council consideration of staff recommendation for the adoption of resolution and approval of energy services agreements.
Thank you, Mr. Fidler. Mr. Clegg, do you wish to make any comments?
Thank you, Mayor. Not at this time.
Thank you. And before we go to council for comment and action, we'll go to the public. Madam Clerk, would you please call the public speakers, and each speaker will have up to 3 minutes for comments.
Our first speaker is Ashu Jain.
Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Go, council members and staff. My name is Ashu Jain. I work for NG Services, and I'm from Pasadena, California. I'm here to request the council to reject the proposal in front of you and go out for a competitive RFP. And the main reasons are, the fact that Forefront Power won the RFP 3 years ago has nothing to do with the price of the proposal that's sitting in front of you. Every proposal, solar proposal, is customized for the site that it's designed for. You have to design the project, you have to find out the material price, you have to walk subcontractors to get the pricing, you have to put your own cost and your profit margin on it. Basically, it's a sole source proposal. there is nothing competitive about that process. So the fact that they won the RFP 3 years ago doesn't mean that the city is assured that you're getting competitive pricing on this project. The second thing I wanted to say was, it was, I don't know if it was disclosed to you, but Spur earns a fee of close to $1 million from Forefront. So that is clearly something that you can save if you go out for an RFP, a clear saving of $1 million on the top. The third thing I wanted to say was that when we met with staff a month ago, before the last month's council meeting, we pointed out that the Forefront contract included a provision that they could raise their prices by 62% after award of work. And when we pointed that out, staff did a tremendous job of negotiating with Spur, with Forefront, and getting it cut down by 90%. So they saved potentially saved $17 million, which raises a question: who's doing the due diligence on behalf of the city? It's not Spur or Forefront. They are biased. You need to hire a consultant who can look out for your own interest and make sure that all the provisions in the contract are market. They're not out of market. The Director of Public Works mentioned the delay will cost money, ITC, investment tax credit. Any substantial solar company has warehoused solar panels, and we can offer you 30% tax credit even if you do the project in 2023. So any substantial solar company, it's not us, every company has warehouse solar panels. As long as we use those panels, we can offer you 30% tax credit. Any NEM 2.0, has a 20-year grandfathering complex. It doesn't take 12 to 18 months to do an RFP. Madeira UST did a 37-site RFP, and it's taken them 3 to 4 months to put it in front. It'll take them 6 months to award the RFP.
Thank you, Mr.
so
Jain.
much.
Madam Clerk, next speaker, please.
We have Mike Turnipseed.
Welcome.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, and staff, Michael Turnipseed, I represent the Kern County Taxpayers Association. Since 2007, we have been working with school districts on their school bonding and procedures, and we have seen many bond programs. And there's right ways and wrong ways to do it, and I can show you fields littered with programs that no longer work in the system we're in today. I'll talk about that in a little bit. So when I was researching this, I went to Spur. And they brag about the best available prices and terms. Was that 3 years ago when they did the RFP? That's not today. No hidden risk or fees. Well, we just heard there's an administrative fee of $951,000 buried in the program. So using that, multiplying it by 3%, I figure you're doing a $30 million project. Nobody could tell me what this project was going to cost. So now I just found that out tonight by sitting here. Kern County, which the city brags about in economic development, we are the renewable energy capital of not only California, but the United States. We have more renewable energy than anybody. And yet this city, with all the expertise we have, and taxpayers who are paying taxes, were not asked to give a competitive bid on this process. That is disrespecting the taxpayers who pay a lot of money on Measure N. And which brings me to another part. You're dealing with the San Francisco company. If you don't set up a point of purchase program, your sales tax that they paid on those panels go to San Francisco and not you. The county's been doing this for years on solar and wind projects. They set up a point of purchase in the county. All the sales tax flows through that point of purchase, and they get the sales tax, the 1% sales tax. I didn't see that in any of these documents. And then we get to the fact of local hire. Where are all these workers? We have a high unemployment rate. We have workers that are trained in solar and energy fields. They don't have an opportunity to work because you're not hiring a local contractor who uses local people and will guarantee that. So getting through this, I see the clock is running. The last question is who did the analysis? And when I've talked to some of my friends, and when you talk about people in Bakersfield who don't have the ability to analyze, we have a nationwide caliber firm, WZI, Mary Jane Wilson and Jess Frederick. You know them. They are world-class people right in your doorstep, and you didn't talk to them. And the last thing to say, there has been no economic studies on the numbers that I could see or be provided. There's no discounted cash flow. There's no net present values. None of the things that most people are using to analyze their projects correctly.
Thank you, Mr.
I think you should reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turnipseed. And our last speaker, Madam Clerk.
Troy Hightower.
Welcome.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members, and city staff. My name is Troy Hightower. I'm an independent consultant, and I wanted to make some comments on what's being proposed as far as solar projects, the individual projects. I understand and I agree with some of the earlier comments. There are a lot of issues, but I want to talk about specific projects in the list. The City Hall South and the police department sites, I do think are very good sites and would be a good investment for the city. I've had experience with renewable projects in the past. My recommendation for them would be that they should also be configured such that they could provide emergency power for those facilities. And then all solar sites, I believe, should also be set up such that electric vehicle charging stations could be installed at the same sites. Now, the one site I do take issue with, and that's the ICE Center. Based on the table in the staff report, the ICE Center expense is $610,000 a year. And based on what Mr. Fielder said, the total spending in the city is $6 million. That one facility is 10%. And so the ICE Center, my understanding is that's an entertainment center. It's a niche. It doesn't really represent what most of the residents would be interested in. And so I think that I understand it's very expensive to operate ICE when it's 100 and something degrees out. But I think that installing a solar system to try and cover that is not a good investment. And even according to the table here, with the solar, it's still $550,000 a year. So I'm not questioning whether solar should work there. I don't think it's a good idea that we should have a facility that uses that much power that would require and use so much solar. I think I would recommend for the city to strongly consider repurposing that facility. And if not, at least have the users pay the fees to cover the cost of operation. With that, then the solar systems that is listed here at 1.5, you could put in other places, like the new police academy, at the new parking facility at Amtrak. The downtown parking center could have solar, and then you could have electric vehicle charging stations in the downtown parking center. That would support travelers coming to Bakersfield that stay at the Padre. So with that, I strongly encourage the city to consider what I'm recommending. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hightower. Is that the last?
Yes.
Thank you. So now let's return it to council. Councilmember Freeman.
First for Nick. What happens at the end of the 20-year term? First, I'm not sure. Do we own the equipment, or does the forefront own the equipment and they could theoretically remove it? But what happens at the end of 20 years?
At the end of 20 years, the city does have the option to buy it, but like you'd mentioned, Forefront still owns the facility. If we do not decide to buy it, then they would be required to remove it. Or they can continue to extend the PPA. There's three options. They can extend the PPA, or we could purchase the equipment, or that we can ask them to remove it.
Now, normally, if you lease a car for 20 years, you've amortized the capital cost over the 20 years plus the return, and you pay $1 or 50 cents at the end, and they give it to you. That's a normal situation for 20 years. They've already amortized and recovered their capital. Is this kind of equipment that we just couldn't run it anyway if we, let's say we bought it? I would think the provision would be you would buy it for almost nothing. But we don't know what the charge would be if we bought it at the end of 20 years.
There is a scale for purchasing the equipment that's provided as part of the agreements. We could negotiate with them at the end of the 20-year term to acquire the facilities. However, like you said, the system has a 20-year life. However, they estimate that the solar panels will degrade at about 0.5% a year. So it would result in probably a 90% efficiency by the end of the 20-year life.
But that wasn't discussed or thought about at the end of the year. If we did elect to purchase it, it should have been pretty cheap. I would assume they would have recaptured their costs. It'd be nice to know more than, hey, at the end of 20 years, you have to pay 50% of the original purchase price. That it would be nice if there was something that showed, hey, you can get this for almost nothing, like you would most things that you'd paid a 20-year lease on it, and were clearly depreciated. Okay, a few other comments. What exactly expires in January that we lose? You said January is the date that federal or state, certain, I think, credits. Could you just go over that again?
So the federal tax credits step down on a yearly basis. Right now they're at 26%. In January of 2021, they stepped down to 22%. In January of 2022, they stepped down to 10%.
And these are the credit for what? Are they the credits the other gentleman was talking about for the purchase of the equipment?
Yeah, so when we acquire, so the city cannot receive a tax credit. The companies that are installing the system can receive a tax credit. So they will receive a tax credit based on the value of the system at 26%. So that is the beneficial part of the city going through a PPA, because we don't receive the tax credits available through the federal tax credits.
Okay. I made a note that for the type of work that Spur did, when we did, they clearly, Spur has a good reputation. Lots of people use them. They clearly provide a good service because hundreds of cities use them. So I don't have a problem with Spur per se. They clearly provide a service that a lot of little cities couldn't afford to do all of this analysis and work. And 3%, they're actually acting like a general contractor. That's 3 to 4% is real normal when you do a percentage administration fee to a general contractor. That part is normal for the work they did. But we had some good ideas that did come out of some of the comments here. Mr. Turnipseed, and I say these because I don't know if we're done with the entire negotiation process with whomever, whether it's Forefront or a new person, but I'd like to see this point of purchase contract is something I hadn't heard about, that if it can be done, it certainly would be nice to have that as one of the provisions in ours. So I just say things thinking you still might be able to do some of these things. The guarantee of X percent, what's reasonable, I'm not sure, 60%, 70% of local hires, or a best efforts or something, that is a great idea. And I'd like to see something like that, whoever we deal with, incorporated into because these are good ideas that come out of these kind of hearings. I like them.
So I can let you know that the local electrical union, IBEW, supported this project. As you're aware, the contractors will search those subs that are local, so they don't have to pay.
Yeah, normally they would anyway.
Yeah.
But it's nice to sort of have, hey, you know, you will, rather than taking potluck, economically it makes sense normally to use your locals. Clearly, they don't have to ship them in and house them and everything else, but I thought that was a good idea. I also didn't know exactly what WZI, who is a really good firm, does on these kinds of things. And I don't know if a decision will be made tonight or not, but if WZI, if we didn't make a decision tonight, if we said, let's look at this for 2 more weeks, if WZI was one who could do an overview, is this a good deal, you know, give us a third party. We're being put in kind of a funny position here as council members with no expertise in this area, and I think everybody's a little confused that we get into micromanaging your department or second-guessing engineering questions and bids, and makes me a little uncomfortable. But if there's a third party, like a WZI, and again, I'm not sure they're qualified for this, that could ever take a look at this, is this a good deal or not, give us a third-party opinion very quickly, you know, within a week or 2. It's certainly something that'd be interesting to pursue, because that's the problem, is everybody's sitting here saying, you know, who do you believe? We keep being told opposite things, and we don't have time to check them out. That's a full-time job. So I think council members get concerned when we get conflicting information. It makes it tough for us. So also I thought something came up with the last speaker is, and I think it's true, we're going to have additional projects like this. We have more facilities. They may exceed this in the next round. So we apparently think this is a good idea. So we'll be doing a lot more of it, I would think. It might be a year out and have a little less credit, but I assume you're going to be taking looks at other facilities. So this is phase 1. And phase 2, I think we'll probably at least do it carefully and be sure the council's aware of if you are going to use a spur versus a local, you know, RFP yourself, that we would be fully apprised beforehand and, you know, say, yeah, that's a good way to go, so we and not have a debate the night we have a final proposal in, because that always makes people uncomfortable. So I think all of us should know there's going to be more of these, and people will get to bid on those most likely. Okay, those are my comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Freeman. We'll have Councilmember Smith and then Councilmember Weir. Councilmember Smith?
Thank you, Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We can barely hear you, Councilmember.
Can you hear me now?
A little better.
Not really? Okay, well, I'll talk louder. I just want to state that what solar? I think solar is good. And I met with Forefront and sounded like a great deal, and I think it is a good deal. Obviously, the city's going to save money over the years, but it's difficult for me when you have a competitor standing up saying,
Barely hear, Councilmember.
you know, there's millions of dollars that you renegotiated and I helped save, and there's perhaps better money to be saved. I just think transparency in this situation is the best thing for taxpayers, and so I think that we should go ahead and put it out to bid. I don't like wasting time, but we do need long-term to have transparency for the community, and I think that's the best way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Weir.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple things, and I agree with Councilmember Freeman. If we could look at getting a purchase point here to where we could say that, and I'm being told yes, we can do that. Okay, that answers that question. It's going to be in the contract? We'll add it in the contract. Good. Takes care of that. I've heard a lot about this $900,000 fee. And apparently, for some people, it was hidden in the contract, but I've known about this fee for a long time. And they charge us fee just like when we get grants, we take an administrative fee out. We do it all the time. The situation is, though, that fee is already built into their costs. It's already built into our rate. So it's not we're getting $1 million saving minus $900,000. It's already built into the rate. So it's not going to have a cost to us immediately, but it will over a period of time. We'll pay for that fee. You know, I've been on the council 14 years, and I feel like I've been working on this all of that time. It really has drawn out. I don't know about the rest of you, but I met with Sam and I met with Kevin, and we've talked over the period of time. I feel like I've been fully vetted on this. I think I understand what's going on. There are some good comments that people are making, but when you come to the end of a 15-month process and when it comes to the end of a 15-month process, it's pretty easy to stand up and throw rocks at things. But I think this has been vetted already. We've already had a competitive process to get this vendor. The vendor has invested a vast amount of time here. The vendor, from what I know, the vendor has an excellent reputation. He works for the public. He is part of a public entity. And I know that it worked here before, and I've checked. I don't know that I've heard not one complaint about anything here locally. I know that they're going to use local labor, and I would like to see that, if that could be intensified a little bit in the contract too, to where we're committed to the local labor, even though we are going to do that. And I hate to see tax credits go away. And I know that they've already given up 4% of their tax credit because we didn't finish this in 2019. And they came back and they've renegotiated, and they actually lowered the price, even though they lost part of that credit. If we go back out and we go from a 26% tax credit down to 10%, we are wasting a lot of money. We're wasting a ton of money. So I don't really have a reason that makes me want to stop at this point and continue to vet it. All my questions have been answered, and I move staff's recommendation on this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Weir. Councilmember Rivera, please.
Thank you, Mayor. So, real quick, and I'll echo Councilmember Weir's comments. I agree with him, and I do think if there's an element to kind of affirm some commitment to local hire, I think that'd be great, though I don't know that necessarily needs to be required. I think the fact that we've received support from, or based on who we've received support from, I think there's a pretty good likelihood that that's the direction we're going to go in. And I think I maybe want to amplify his point that after 15 months, it can be much easier to throw rocks at something. Right. And I read NG's letter, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate you coming to the meeting. I think you said you were from Pasadena, so it's not like we're talking about a local entity versus an entity from San Francisco. They're both from outside places. But I note that at the end of your letter, you say that you've competed with Forefront Power directly on 8 RFPs, and you've won 7 of them. And I guess I figure that's probably easy if the process is Forefront does all the work. You get to see what their product is, and then you go into a community, protest it, and manage to bring a lower price. I mean, I think it's always easy to work backwards, and I think that's why I have a very hard time, not believing my staff. I mean, at the end of the day, I agree with Councilmember Freeman. I am not an expert on solar, and I'm certainly not an expert on this process, but I have a lot of faith in our staff, and our staff has thoroughly vetted this. They have spent a lot of time looking into this. They are recommending we approve it, and that is all I need to hear tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Rivera. Councilmember Sullivan.
Thank you. Okay, well, some good comments have been made. Appreciate, this is one of those subjects that this is a big responsibility. I mean, we want to do the right thing, certainly. Someone mentioned, it was either Mike or one of the last speakers, saying that we need to hire a consultant that's not biased. We have our staff. They are biased for the citizens of Bakersfield, for the taxpayers of Bakersfield. And we've been around for a long time. I feel we have the best of the best. And believe me, we spend a lot of money hiring consultants when it's necessary. And so we have been through all of that. And I think something that's very important is the second item in our the history of this project. Fall of 2017, Spur ran a statewide competitive RFP, awarded and entered into a master contract with Forefront Power. I mean, does our word mean nothing? I mean, there is a process, and we went through the process. And tonight, we've finally gotten to the point where we are ready to approve. And Nick, that was a lot of very detailed, excellent presentation, but represents a lot of work over several years. And going back to when we first started the intention to do this 10 years ago. So I think and yes, it's easy to, I mean, what credibility would we have if we to start all over again, but also, who is to guarantee that we will be any better off? Because you have pointed out that we will have lost some commitments from them, some price guarantees from them, and starting all over, which will be, what was it, from a year, from 12 to 18 months, and the savings that we will have lost during the time of being able to use the products. And I have never seen anything go down. I mean, when does anything go down? Workmanship, labor, products, everything unfortunately continues to go up. And we would be starting from scratch. We would be on our own, having no idea what the new figures are going to be a year or 18 months from now, and knowing that we're throwing away something that we've committed to, but we feel is the best, the very best. And not only do we have a big responsibility and a difficult decision because of the responsibility to our residents and our taxpayers, but you certainly do. And it's going to be very obvious one day if this was the right thing to do or not the right thing to do. But to throw something away that we've been working on all this time, let's also keep in mind our wages, to our professional staff. But I just don't think, and there's no, to repeat myself, there's no guarantee that we might think, my gosh, it's the most foolish, how regretful that we started all over again, because we are worse off. No one has been able to, I know no one is even trying to guarantee that our amounts our amount is going to be any different, and it might be just the opposite. And, you know, I really appreciate the fact that, you know, we have our staff, but also when the Chamber of Commerce, when the Association of Realtors, both in support of this contract, the people that we have committed to, agreed to work with, accepted, you know, agreed the contract to work with, Forefront Power, and then the city schools, you know, all of these are writing in support. The union, the two unions, all in support. And for the company, and Russell Johnson called and gave me an excellent presentation. You did good, Russell. But yet, you know, to come on the scene now and make us nervous, and because we certainly want to do what's best, but yet that's a little where there are no guarantees. And we need to be you know, when we're going through an RFP and we go through the process and we make a commitment, that company needs to know that we've made a commitment. And usually, always, when something has to be redone, it's more expensive because you're starting all over again with all new prices, and unfortunately, prices continue to go up. So I just think, and believe me, we have all vacillated on this because it's so important, but because of all the circumstances and all the information that has been brought out, hard figures. And perhaps we can work on the point of purchase. I'd never heard of that. That's not my expertise, but appreciate it being brought up. And of course, we always get as much local labor as we can. So I think we're dealing with, and Tracy Leach, you know, very credible, very, very excellent, very credible also. So I'm feeling that we need to, we're finally to the point where we're supposed to approve this, and everything is in place. And so maybe we would go another week to see if we can get the point of purchase, which I had never heard about, but it sounded good, and maybe not to. And maybe not to delay, because tonight is important. So is there a way to commit to this company and the figures that we have with leaving that tiny window open? I don't know. What do you, and our city manager also wanted to say something. Christian, I know tonight has been the night to make a decision, and I'm ready to make a decision.
Madam City Attorney.
Mayor, Councilmember Sullivan, I was going to ask Councilmember Weir to clarify his motion, but it's my understanding that that Forefront is here and they're willing to go ahead and add the point of purchase as well as a commitment to local labor. So if they're willing to do that, my office could just go ahead and make that change, and we can move forward with the motion.
With the masks, I wasn't able to think who was who, and so
great.
Well, that makes it the best of the best of the best then. I feel very comfortable. And I think we'd be remiss, we'd be going back on an agreement that we've had for 3 years with no guarantees that we're ever going to do any better, and it may turn out that we would do worse. So I'm ready to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm in line with Councilmember Smith's comments. We have a duty and obligation to protect taxpayer dollars. When we have another company or companies that say they can do it better and cheaper, I think we should look at that. I think we should put it out to competitive bid. As a fiscal conservative, I think that's the right thing to do. We do it for police cars and we do it for fire trucks. We should do it for a multi-million-dollar project. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Freeman.
No.
Change your mind. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a question for staff, because I, like my colleagues, have gone back and forth on this particular issue and have tried to do my independent research and due diligence on this for the last couple of weeks. But my question is regarding staff's analysis of other jurisdictions and any other jurisdictions that went through the RFP process and established a PPA. What is the analysis there?
Thank you, Councilmember and Mayor and Council. A couple of important comparisons that staff has made. We've looked closely at cities that have used the REAP program through SPUR. We looked closely at the rates that have been achieved for City of Fresno, City of San Diego. There are some limited comparisons, interestingly, because there is a government code section 4217 that allows local governments to forego with typical procurement processes, and so many of the lead vendors in this area have proposed to multiple agencies direct sole source projects, and so there's actually a limited number of RFPs, and by comparison to the number of projects, there's actually been hundreds of projects in the state that have been completed with a limited number of RFPs. We did look at just a small number of RFPs. We looked at a Kings County RFP that was done a couple of years ago and looked at the rates that were available, and the contract that we're bringing forward today has more favorable rates than that RFP that was competitively bid out. And I couldn't speak to every RFP that's out there, but I think it speaks to the purchasing power that a cooperative joint powers authority brings to the table. They just bring lower rates typically because they have that economy of scale. And so we've seen that our contract we're proposing today has more favorable rates than the handful of RFPs that we've reviewed.
I appreciate that. So even with the previously mentioned fees from Forefront paid to Spur, that these rates are more competitive, and just for the benefit of the public, I think I know the answer, but those fees are not a direct fee placed upon the city, but those are baked into the rates already in the proposal.
That is correct.
Okay. And then can you, there was a question about warehoused panels and the fact that there's an ability to use that federal tax credit for warehouse panels. Has staff done that analysis as well?
Mayor, Councilmember Gonzalez, we have spoke with NG and Ashu. He has made that statement, and we've asked other vendors that it is a possibility for them to house or purchase several solar panels and house them and use a percentage of those solar panels on a system. I don't know that every solar company has that ability. I don't know what the percentage is that's required to install that. However, that goes against what we were just talking about, a point of purchase. Because if you're buying something out of a warehouse that somebody's already bought, then that throws that out the window. Yes, we've heard of it. I don't know the exact details of those how much percentage has to be used on the project, and how long ago those solar panels had to be acquired for it. But I believe there is a sunset date on that as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I appreciate staff's work on this, and I'm comfortable moving forward with this particular project, and I appreciate the willingness to work on that point of purchase program. Thank you, Mr. Turnipseed, for your recommendation there, and appreciate also the local hire provision as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gonzalez. Councilmember Weir.
Just a clarification, City Attorney, do I need to amend my motion? But, I mean, the vendors already acquiesced. I mean, so.
Correct. If you could, it wouldn't hurt, Councilmember Weir, if you could just move staff's recommendation and direct staff to go back and make the point of purchase and the commitment to local hire. And then that way we don't have to make, we don't have to bring the contract back to the council.
Amazing. That's just what I was going to say.
There you go.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other requests to speak, and so we have a motion. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Parlier?
No.
Councilmember Rivera? Councilmember Gonzalez?
Aye.
Councilmember Weir?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
No.
Councilmember Freeman?
Yes.
And Councilmember Sullivan.
Yes.
Motion is approved with Councilmember Parlier and Councilmember Smith voting no.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Under consent calendar, we have items 8A through 8BD for approval. A staff memorandum was received regarding item 8G, transmitting correspondence in support and opposition. Another memorandum has been received regarding 8U, correcting the ward for the location of maintenance district area, and an additional staff memorandum was received regarding items 8AL, revising the subject line to correct amount being amended in the agreement.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Does any council member wish to recuse themselves from an item? Does any council member wish to remove a consent item for separate consideration? I received notification from Councilmember Freeman that he would like to remove item G as in George, and I would also like to remove item I as in Ida. I make a motion to approve consent calendar items 8A through 8BD as in Boy David, along with the noted agenda corrections by the city clerk.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Parlier?
Aye.
Councilmember Rivera?
Aye.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Aye.
Councilmember Weir?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Freeman?
Aye.
And Councilmember Sullivan.
Aye.
Motion is unanimously approved.
Thank you. So now let's go to item G, please. Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Mayor. The reason I removed this is we received
Put your mask down so we can hear you.
we received so many comments on this item. I thought we needed to at least reconsider it. And I want people to know, I don't have anything against chickens. This, to me, is not about chickens. I think the people who spoke about chickens love chickens and will behave responsibly and wouldn't be a problem with chickens, those who have spoken to us. However, we're talking about making a massive zone change, biggest one I've ever seen in the city of Bakersfield, to really radically alter single-family housing zoning after 85,000 people moved into their homes. When you make, if I, as a developer, when I tried to make zone changes, if I wanted to go across the street on 20 acres and build a shopping center, I had to do a 2,000-page EIR, post notices, hold hearings, respond to comments. The idea is that it's transparent and that everybody gets a voice. We're talking about changing the zoning after the fact on every person's home, and with a law that says everybody in the neighborhood can have 12 chickens. I'd be saying the same thing if we said they can all have 2 horses, they can all have 1 cow. The chickens are not the issue. The process is giving the people a voice and doing what the people want. And all these people who already moved into their homes ought to have a voice. And that's what this, we have this California Environmental Quality Act called CEQA. I'm sure I have more experience in CEQA than anybody in the city, including the city attorney, because I've been in CEQA suits in at least 5 counties in California over 30 years, and lost most of them when I tried not to do an EIR or a CEQA process. It's a really burdensome law. A lot of things I don't like about it. It delays things. I think it's overregulation, but its purpose is transparency and giving people a voice and addressing problems. When someone makes a comment, says a health and safety thing, you have to make a written response of why there isn't one by a medical expert, not an opinion of myself or someone. So I think that we have to go through a CEQA process. The realtors wrote a pretty good letter. We also got a, we got a legal letter from a former planning commissioner attorney in our city who knows CEQA backwards and forwards after he processed projects on our own planning commissioner for a decade, and made it crystal clear that we're violating CEQA if we don't go through a complete CEQA process if we proceed. But the realtor said, and I won't read much, but one of the concerns raised by the Bakersfield Association in previous comments on the subject is that the HIN ordinance has not undergone an environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act. The purpose of CEQA review is to provide decision makers with information about environmental impacts of proposed projects prior to granting approval and to allow the public adequate time to comment on the impacts of proposed changes in their community. Proposed amendments to zoning ordinances are among the types of public agency actions that are subject to review under CEQA. This is because a zoning ordinance can result in a reasonably foreseeable change in the environment caused by conduct or activity that the zoning ordinance proposes to permit. This concept was recently reaffirmed by the California Supreme Court. Later, they say the HIN ordinance has proven to be a matter of significant public interest for those on all sides of the issue, given its potential to impact about 85,000 properties and more than 200,000 Bakersfield residents, et cetera, et cetera. They really say there is no reason to make a rushed and hasty decision on this issue. And I won't quote from the legal letter, but it's clear this needs to go through a full CEQA process. Only if we get sued. So I think we will, but if we don't, you can all say, Freeman, you were wrong. Nothing happened, nobody cared. And if we do, I'm going to say, council, I was right. So those are kind of my comments. I'd like to hear from other members.
Thank you, Councilmember Freeman. Councilmember Sullivan.
Okay. Yes, several little mentions here. Giving people a voice. Wow, we've been going through this for a long time. I feel we've given people a voice. I have really enjoyed the telephone calls that I've received. Just really all but one has been in favor. And not only have we been going through this, a lot of work has been done on this, getting people's signature in favor. But then also the elected body of everybody in Bakersfield is on, we are the final decision makers. And again, it's a very important issue, important subject, entirely different. That's the beauty of city government. But yet, I am delighted to be able to support this. I think it's good for families. It's memories for families. It's good for health. I mean, we had a wonderful array of comments tonight. And as far as it being legal, I have a lot of confidence in our city attorney, and she's not going to say something. I mean, she's there to keep us out of trouble, and there's no trouble. There is no trouble. There's not even trouble for a neighbor, because at the last council meeting, it was brought out that the loudness of a hen clucking is the loudness of people talking. I thought that was great. That's interesting. Never heard that before. Some people talk louder than others, but but people talking, so don't have to worry about that. And one lady, actually I've had two people call and saying, when I walk, I hear roosters, roosters crowing. I said, okay, well then get the address where the roosters are living, because that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about hens. So, you know, the two main gentlemen that were here tonight, they had, you know, my generation, gray hair, my generation, and their concerns, one had, the time before, had health concerns. I didn't mean to be disrespectful, but I said, well, then don't go in the backyard of somebody that's raising hens. You know, that family is enjoying the hens. They're getting healthy eggs and memories for their children. I mean, usually families that want to get into something like this, they're good, strong families, family units. And if there's anything we need right now is family recreation, and this is a quality of life issue. And the one fellow that you know, that was building a millions of dollars building an assisted living place, how wonderful! But that's you know, it had nothing to do with us approving the many people that are already raising chickens, hens in their backyard. I think it's a wonderful idea. I was in favor of it 8 years ago, and I'm so glad it's coming back at this time, and I'm having a chance to place my vote. I'm strongly in favor of it. Anything, you know, and it being mentioned that it wouldn't pass CEQA, how can they justify not allowing a family to have chickens in their, you know, hens in their backyard if they want to? I don't like to say no to something that there's not a real good reason for saying no to. And I think it's just nice. And really, 8 years ago, when I read the list of cities that were already doing it, I mean, high-profile cities down south, I was amazed. I was really surprised. But then that started winning me over, and I just thought, why not, you know? And many will try it and get tired of it after 6 months. But then there will be, the one lady said that, you know, she likes the routine, and where kids are concerned, it gives them responsibilities and you know, caring for something else. And she enjoyed her chickens. So I don't think there's any good reason for us to complicate this and think it has to go to CEQA. I mean, we've heard the pros and the cons, many more pros than cons. And so now it's up to we highly paid representatives in Bakersfield to make the decision. And I am eager to continue to support this. And believe me, if I knew there were chickens next door to where I live, I think good for them. You know, good for them. They're going to the trouble of they probably have young kids, or they're doing it for their own health issues. Either way, it's something to support. And anybody that's not going to be a responsible hen owner, then they are going to be turned in our code enforcement. We'll have a couple more calls, and they can handle it, and then they'll give a citation, and they're going to have to clean up and do better, or they'll get fined. You know, we have everything in place, but with all the things that we have to worry about, to think that letting families have healthy eggs from the hens that they want to take care of, not a good reason. I'm in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan. Vice Mayor, and then Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I've spoken to MT about this. Very nice guy. We have a lot of things in common. And he is very committed and driven on this issue. And I commend you for that. But the realtors, since I've been on the council, you know, one of the drivers, our economic drivers, is how our real estate market is doing. And I know we've looked at it in the past, and gosh, you know, there's really been a downturn in our real estate. What are we going to do? We always reach out to our experts, the realtors, and get their opinion and how we can get that sector of our economy back. And I can't see how we can just negate their letter, their voice on this, their, you know, 2,000 plus members, and the 85,000 potential homeowners that could be affected by this ordinance, and I do think we are opening ourselves to possible litigation. And I make a motion that we table this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Sullivan.
Well, we did.
Oh,
we-
Smith.
do we
I'm
go to
sorry.
that first?
Councilmember
Thank you.
Smith, then Councilmember Sullivan.
Thank you, Mayor. I would state that my feedback has been overwhelmingly positive also. And it's a great family activity, and we've talked all the pluses and minuses before. And I would make a motion that we adopt item G from staff's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Then Councilmember Sullivan.
Continue to speak, Jenny?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Thank you, Karen. Well, the Realtors, yes. Love the Realtors, respect the Realtors, but at the same time, I think a lot is being made over. You know, really, when I wake up every morning, I have a dog, two families that have barking dogs every morning, you know. And I know they love those dogs, but oh my gosh. So hens are not a problem. And it's very possible. And one lady said that she'd love to buy a house with a chicken coop. So I think the Realtors, I was in the real estate business for a long time, and I just, you know, I love family entertainment and good strong families, and so I don't think it's going to be a problem. I respect the Realtors, and I was very much appreciating your perspective for the last issue, but it's not going to be a problem. And as far as a kind of a flat market, it's a pretty good market, I understand. So anyway, not going to be a problem. Many are doing it anyway. This just gives them something that now they can do it without having to worry about having to get rid of their chickens. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan. So we have two motions. We'll take Councilmember Smith's first, which is to follow staff's recommendation. This would be yes. Madam Clerk, please poll. That's the last item. Yeah.
Vice Mayor Parlier?
No.
Councilmember Rivera?
Aye.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Aye.
Councilmember Weir?
No.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Freeman?
No.
And Councilmember Sullivan?
Ooh, seldom do we have this close of a vote. This is exciting. I'm a strong yes.
So motion is approved.
Thank you.
Woo-hoo!
And now, Vice Mayor on item I, please.
Thank you, Mayor. District Attorney Zimmer spoke regarding item I and our support for Proposition 20. I can't elaborate on her comments. I think she did a great job, and I think we need to be in support, and I make a motion to approve.
I don't see any requests for comments. We have a motion. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Parlier?
Aye.
Councilmember Rivera?
Aye.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Aye.
Councilmember Weir?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Freeman?
Aye.
Councilmember Sullivan?
Aye.
Motion is approved.
Thank you. Our next item is the public hearing. Each side will be allowed 15 minutes. It's 15 minutes for all speakers per side, so it's important that you identify yourself and make your statement succinctly so others may speak. We'll hear statements from those opposed to staff's recommendation first, then we'll hear from those who'd like to speak in favor of staff's recommendation. If there's testimony on both sides, each side will be allowed a 5-minute rebuttal. There's a clock on the TV screens behind me which indicates 15 minutes. Please step to the mic and identify yourself. After 14 minutes, the yellow light will come on. At the end of 15 minutes, a red light will flash indicating your time is up. Quickly end your statement. You may ask questions during the statement, but they won't be addressed until the public hearing is closed. If you have written comments that are longer than your verbal statement, please give those to the clerk. She'll provide copies to the council. Please be courteous to others who wish to speak. Unless there's an approval by the majority of the city council, there's a strict 15-minute time limit per side, so please be concise. Madam Clerk, please read the first and only public hearing item.
Under hearings, a public hearing to consider a resolution ordering the vacation of the north-south alley adjacent to the east of 266 Jefferson Street.
Thank you. Mr. Fidler?
Honorable Mayor and council members, the property owner of 266 Jefferson Street is requesting the vacation of the adjacent alleyway to his property, a portion of the alleyway for personal use. That we have received no objections to this request and staff is recommending approval.
Thank you, Mr. Fidler. At this time, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to staff's recommendation? Seeing none, is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of staff's recommendation? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and return it to council for comment and action. Councilmember Gonzalez, this is in your ward.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt the resolution.
I don't see any other requests for comments. We have a motion. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Parlier?
Aye.
Councilmember Rivera?
Aye.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Aye.
Councilmember Weir?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Freeman? And Councilmember Sullivan. Motion is approved.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Council and mayor statements.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to make comments? Vice Mayor.
Thanks, Mayor. Well, anybody that's been in their backyard this summer has noticed the invasive mosquitoes that have been, they call them ankle biters, that have been attacking everybody. I've received multiple complaints on the issue, and I asked staff if we can please reach out to the Kern County Mosquito and Vector Control. I know we have a couple of appointees over there. Maybe they even could come and talk to us about that. In July, I was in Florida, and I was in the middle of the Everglades, and I experienced less mosquitoes there than I have in Bakersfield. And the reason is they really have a mitigation plan there to deal with it. And I know it's something new for us with this new mosquito, but we need to do something for it. Now that the hen ordinance has passed and CBAC really doesn't have a plan to deal with abandoned hens, there was a comment from Ms. Richardson that said that she might partner with the city to deal with that. If we're going to reach out to her or also CBAC and figure out what we're going to do with hens on the loose. So I want to thank city staff, specifically Jackie Kitchen, Nick, your team, Jackie's team, and all the hard work that they've done for the Navigation Center. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it, but I hear it's a beautiful facility, and once we start getting some clients there, I'd love to take a tour. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Sullivan.
Thank you very quickly. Christian, when we were talking about the budget, I missed my opportunity to make a comment. Good report, good hard work. But cosmetic, it was mentioned that we are very conservative. We do an excellent job. I think there's probably very little waste that takes place, but the extra for cosmetic, that is huge for the reputation and the morale of our city. And so we really never should we skimp on things that are doable, that are where even in the category of maintenance. And tonight, on my way to the meeting, I again drove, of course, we've all driven on California Avenue and on Truxton Avenue, and those are some of the main streets. And I want us to really put I think we have an idea how we plan to landscape that, but then it needs to be taken care of, because if anything that's nicely landscaped that is not manicured and well taken care of, it just does, it's not good at all. And maybe that would be a place where we would try some artificial turf. But those two main streets need to be, just very, very special. So, and that's an example of what Bruce was talking about, that not skimp on the important things. And the important things are usually not that expensive, but they're cosmetic and they're important. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan. Vice Mayor.
And just to add to Councilmember Sullivan's statements, that that would also include the Auto Mall corridor. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I don't see any other requests to speak. At the League of California Cities annual conference, the Institute for Local Government awarded the City of Bakersfield the 2020 Beacon Spotlight Award. I received this, and so thank you, staff, and I'll be giving this to you, but thank you for all your efforts in sustainability, energy efficiency, and conservation. Appreciate that. And seeing no other requests to speak, we are adjourned at 8:28.